Okay, so we are only 53 minutes late. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Been a long time coming today. Thank you to everybody who came out to the pre show this afternoon. Had a good time and a good talk there. Really excited about the things we're going to discuss tonight. Very glad and appreciative for all of you who've been patient. I'm actually watching the YouTube feed as I'm making this happen. And I've seen that a lot of you were already logged in and patiently waiting for me to get started. So thank you for putting up with the fact that I have very small children, some of which spend a lot of time screaming. And I really didn't want to be doing a live show with my 1-year-old screaming his lungs out because it's extremely loud and annoying. And I wanted to avoid that if at all possible. In fact, some of you may have heard him screaming on the pre-show. Literally, I was outside on my porch, my deck, and I could hear him screaming through the window. So I don't know if that made it onto the show, but if it did, then hallelujah. Thank you so much for coming in. I want to say shouts out to Harvey, shouts out to Raven, and to everyone else who's watching. I'm going to pull up the comment section here. I've sent the emails out, so I won't have to do a lot of the administrative pieces here. But tonight, really want to focus on people walking around on the steps here. But just be aware, as always, with our shows, we'll have family members coming in and out with things going on, especially with Mother's Day being a big production in my house. We'll have stuff happening. But again, the focus of tonight's discussion, it's not really so much a show as it is a discussion. And I really want to emphasize the word discussion because I don't necessarily want to spend a ton of time talking about a topic, because as a person who's been doing this for a very long time in many different arenas, if you will, I've always found that the Q&A that follows a discussion is 7 times out of 10 more powerful, more insightful, and more beneficial than the topics that I discuss. Every once in a while I hit on some topics that are pretty powerful, like the one we're going to be discussing tonight. And I'll talk briefly, but then I really want to get off of the mic to allow you all to ask questions. I actually have some questions that were sent in to the show from the pre-show. We had some folks show up and they knew they couldn't make it tonight because we have a lot of viewers who are in the UK, different parts of Europe, different parts even of the Americas, out in the islands where the time zones are very different. So knowing that they couldn't be on the show because it was going to be 2 a.m, they left their question for me. So we have a comment from, it's here, but not only, yo, glad I caught the stream this time, says Pascal. Thank you, Pascal. Okay, so they show up here on my streaming device before they show up on my computer, but for a second there, I thought we were having a technical difficulty. But anyway, enough babbling. Let's get right into the topic of tonight, which is getting you ready to meet your husband or your wife. But I know my audience, typically it's the ladies who come out to the live shows and ask a lot of great questions, but we do have men too. And some of you could be men that are looking for a husband as well, so I don't know. But the point is, one of the things that I harp on quite a bit when it comes to the area of relationships, again, for those that don't know me, I am a family man who has, by the grace of God, been blessed enough to have a marriage that's been very happy for the better part of 15 years. This is actually my 15th year of marriage. And I've had a lot of mentors, a lot of people teaching me, a lot of other couples senior to me, showing me the ropes, counseling me. I have life mentors that help me quite a bit, who've also been married 16 to 20 years. So a lot of the things that I share with you aren't coming from my own smarts or the fact that I'm just an amazingly intelligent person. A lot of it comes from the fact that I've listened to people way smarter than me, and I've read books from people. I talk about books a ton on the show, and I hate that. Hopefully on YouTube this is showing up right side up. When I'm looking at it, it's backwards. But books like Please Understand Me, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I wrote a blog for the website Personality Hacker today, which will hopefully be going up in the near future if they approve it. I used information from the happiness hypothesis in that article, evolutionary psychology, all these great books that I talk about on the show. These are the folks that I'm learning from. And I say all that to say that's why I may be subject to your approval, qualified to sit here and talk to you about, this is how my wife and I have built what we consider to be a happy marriage. Again, I want to stress that doesn't mean that we haven't had issues. It doesn't mean that we haven't made mistakes. It doesn't mean that I haven't, through my own stupidity and selfishness, done things that hurt her or even hurt myself. Okay, this is not a Hollywood fantasy romance. Okay, we have problems and issues. Just like, I had a live call with my marketing, I call them my ninjas. These are people that I coach in online marketing, and I was telling them about how the housing market crash of 2007, how that affected my family, and I was preparing them for example, the next. We use crash because on the news it sounds way more terrifying, and that's how they get you to pay attention, so they can sell you Viagra ads and whatever nonsense they're trying to sell you. You guys know that I'm a huge advocate of turning off the news. There's ways to get information where you don't have to sit there in front of the TV and be fear-mongered to death. But so the news will call it a crash. What it really is a market correction. You're not going to have a bull market, which is what we're in right now, where everything's going really well, and that's been going on for about 8 years, I think. It can't last forever. Eventually there will be a correction, and you'll have a bear market and a recession. And then it goes in cycles. You have a boom and bust cycle. I'm oversimplifying it, but the point that I was making to them was you need to be prepared for the bear instead of waiting for the news, because when the news starts talking about it, it's already too late. Because none of the people on the news know anything about finance half the time. They're just spouting off what they've heard people like Warren Buffett, who knows what they're talking about, saying. And you want to be prepared for those situations versus just reacting to them. And I told the story about how the value and the equity that we had in our house got almost completely hammered to, when we finally got ready to sell the house, even though we sold it for a great deal more than we paid for the house. Hey, Jolly, what's up? We lost money on the deal. So I was sharing with the group my mistakes, my shortcomings, things that I got wrong, my failures, because I think 10 times out of 10, you're going to learn more from me telling you about how I screwed something up and then maybe turned it around than just telling you, oh, I'm so amazing, I'm so successful, I'm driving around in a Ferrari, and my marriage has been nothing but rainbows and unicorns the entire time I've been married. No, there's been times where I've frustrated her, I've hurt her, she's frustrated and hurt me. That's life. But when you know how to build it right, none of those things are detrimental enough to destroy a marriage. You'll hear a lot of pundits, for example, talk about the number one issue that causes marriage to end in divorce is money. And I don't necessarily, and so the way I'll say that, I don't argue against that because mathematically that's accurate. But I think when people say that, a lot of times when I hear people say it, it's people that aren't married. It's, statisticians or economists, sometimes who aren't married and don't understand some of the nuances that happen underneath the money. And what I would say is that money challenges is correlated with divorce. In other words, when there's a divorce, you'll usually find a family that had money problems. But to say that the money was causation for the divorce, I don't think that's altogether accurate, because when you have two people who've learned to not just to love one another, but really to take up for one another and to commit to making life better for each other, there's a friendship that happens there that when a money problem comes, there's frustration, there's anger because you don't like the situation or the circumstance, but you don't hate the person. Even if the person, we've had issues where both of us have caused financial strain on the family because of choices that we made. But you may get angry in the moment, but that friendship, my argument is that when you have money problems correlated with divorce, the money didn't cause the divorce. It's a correlation. It's the foundation of friendship was not set during the marriage and prior to it, to where they weren't friends. So they started working against one another because if I hadn't married this person, we never would have been in this problem. I mean, if you're saying that, then you're not talking about a friend. You're not talking about someone who you've been deeply committed to. And I can't say that for everybody, obviously. I know there's certainly people in the world who are divorced where it was a money issue. Maybe the wife had a compulsive spending problem and couldn't get it under control, and leaving her was the only way they could survive. Okay, I get that there are certainly probably examples where the money problem is the causation of a divorce or a relationship going sour. But I would believe that at least 50% of the time, the money issue is a symptom, or the money issue is a circumstance that basically shines a spotlight on the real problem, which is the two people have not figured out how to build that, what we call the foundation of friendship, which you will hear a lot about on the channel. You'll hear a lot about this in our marriage program. We call it the marriage experience, which is part of our Good Life Playbook. And the Good Life Playbook is literally a playbook for different areas of your life to understand how to pursue a career properly. Reading an awesome book. Let me see if I can grab it from off screen real quick. I'll keep talking to y'all while I'm looking for it as it relates to career. We'll talk about career. We'll talk about, obviously we have the marriage experience going on right now. We're debating whether or not we're going to have a parenting part of the Good Life Playbook. And the real only reason we're debating is because our children are still very young. There's experiences that I still want to have before I start a program like that, where some of my mentors have way more experience than me and have programs that I think are better suited than what I can create. Because, for example, Joel Salatin is a person that I've met and had the pleasure of learning from, and he has, programs for raising kids. He's going to be leaps and bounds above my ability and Miko's ability to coach. We could have a program for how to deal with young children, but I'd rather have like a holistic thing where we're showing people from start to finish, when your kids are small to when, Joel has grown children. And I'd like to have more experience under my belt before we do something like that. But anyway, let me stop running my mouth here for a second to look at some of the comments. Then I'll get into some of the discussion. We'll continue, and then we'll see where the wind blows us. So Sean Prater says, Byron. Interesting. You're the second person in the world who calls me Byron. The first was a church pastor who couldn't get my name right for like 10 years. And then I went back to that church after I got older, and he called me by my right name. Not offended. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just think it's funny. So Sean says, I once had a coworker who separated from his wife after 2 children, and he told me he was tired of the sex. How do you deal with the sex issue with the same woman for 15 years? Here's the deal. I actually talked about this on the pre-show. If you're having a sex issue, there's a very good chance that your real issue is an intimacy issue. Because remember, sex, that physical manifestation of the love you have for someone else, and here's part of the problem. Our society has it upside down. Our society starts with the physical and then tries, I talked about this on Facebook today. If you're not following me on Facebook, BryantChambers page, get on there. Because I addressed this exact question. What society and Hollywood and the media, who have no idea what they're talking about and are playing on your biology and your psychology to get you to pay attention to something and sell you something versus telling you the truth. What they've told you is relationship starts with the physical and then they evolve into intimacy and friendship, and it should be the other way around. The physical is the icing on the cake. And if you don't have the layers of that cake properly built, the icing doesn't taste good because it has no cake, right? So if you're not building intimacy, and I'm not talking about physical intimacy, I'm talking about the intimacy that comes from 2 people living life together, experiencing, communicating with one another, going through life and helping each other through life to build a bond. So if you've ever heard of soldiers when they go to war, when they come home from the war, that bond is still like, you'll have, and this happened to me years ago. I was on my way to work and I ran into my first sergeant when the short time I spent as a commander, and I saw him on the platform and I said his name, and then we just bear hugged each other. And you could see the people on I was on the subway, and the people in the subway were like, who are these 2 grown men, one in a suit and one's in a military uniform, hugging each other? And that bond, we had been separated for years, and come to find out he was living right down the street from me, and I didn't even know it. But that bond was immediately rekindled because he and I went through hell together, literally went through a place where people were trying to kill us every day and looking out for one another. So when you have that in a marriage and you're building on that friendship and the intimacy and the fun, and you're building all of those layers, then the physical part that icing on the cake is delicious. And what a wise couple told me when I was 19, and I never forgot this, and it's helped me so much in my marriage, because at some point, pretty much anybody in a marriage is going to have some level of sexual frustration. It's just the reality, especially when you start having kids. But I had this couple who had been, I think when I got this advice, they had been married 20 years, maybe 15, 20 years. And we asked that same question because we were kids. We were like, how do we stay married to the same person forever? And their advice was, here's what you don't understand. When you build a relationship properly, the sex actually gets better over time. It doesn't get boring. See, that's what Hollywood and the media tells you. But what Hollywood and the media can't show you is how to build intimacy properly. Okay? They can't show you that because they have no clue. They have no idea. And anybody in Hollywood that does have an idea about it is never going to get green lighted to tell you because it won't sell. Right? Go watch how many people are watching Real Housewives on demand right now, and then look at how many people are watching my stream. Right? So they told us, don't worry. The sex gets better if you do it right. And I am an advocate of that. Like, I have lived that. You have your ups and your downs, but believe me, as you get to know a person and you get to connect with them, and not just in the physical, but we laugh together, we share remorse and tears together, and raising kids, and our kids driving us crazy. When you go through life together, you build a bond that when it comes to the physical piece, man, it's fireworks. And what Hollywood is teaching you is, you got to trade this old model in for a new one because it's not fun anymore. They don't know what they're talking about. And the people who are experiencing that, there's obviously some exceptions to the rule, because there's couples who have literally depression or anxiety. Sometimes there's abuse involved with people. So sex may be a thing that's hard to get right in some relationships. So I respect that. I'm not saying that this truth is the truth for every human soul, but it is possible, I believe, for every couple. But the problem is most couples don't want to put in the work to build intimacy. So what they want is the excitement of the new. And there's always excitement with the new, the chase, the hunt. But when you learn how to do the hunt with the person that you've been with forever, the rewards are far greater than the one night stand Tinder thing. Okay? And some people would argue, well, how could you know? You never did the one night stand sleeping around thing. That's true, but I've also never had leprosy or AIDS, and I've heard that they're pretty bad. I can listen to other people talk about their horror stories and get that this isn't as awesome as Hollywood's trying to make it sound. Great question, by the way. Keep that type of stuff coming. Roshek says, I feel a ton of these relationship topics keep coming up. Had a talk at my school, people around me, just got into relationships. Spring is full of infatuation. That's probably right. Sean Prater says, sorry for the name typo. It's cool, man. It's totally fine. Get my name. I'm not one of those dudes that freaks out when people say my name wrong. I just thought it was funny because there was another person in my life who called me Byron. He called me Byron for like a year. And I came back 10 years later and I saw him and he's like, Brian, right? I was like, you realize you've been calling me Byron this whole time? So it's cool, man. It's all friends here. Jolly says, I will make sure the question is answered at Raven Selenite. Quick answer though. Did Raven ask something that I missed? Question for later. How do you find a mentor, and do they need to be local to you? So a couple different ways we can look at mentorship. First and foremost, books. I get more mentorship out of books than anything in the world. That's not necessarily true. So first, before you get the books, look in your inner circle. My first mentor ever was my dad, man. Or at least my father that raised me. Many of you know that I was not raised by my biological father, that I was adopted by my grandfather and my grandmother. Those two were my first mentors. My father taught me how to be a good leader, how to take care of people, how to be a protector. The reason why I tell that story about being in the gym when I thought that guy was going to put his hands on the girl that worked there and I was going to put him through the wall if he did. My dad taught me that. My dad taught me you take up for people who can't defend themselves. And I watched him do it. Like I have a scar on my hand that you can't see that a kid gave me. And it just so happened during the time that kid's dad worked for my dad after the kid beat me up. So he's like, go get that kid and tell him to meet you out in the field like you're going to play ball. My dad drives up in his car tells us both to come over. He says, if you F with my kid again, I'll ship you and your family I'll ship your father. It wasn't your family. He was like, if you F with my kid again, I will ship your father to Korea. Do you understand me? That's my pops, man. For better, for worse, that's the man that raised me. So I learned that from him. My leadership ability to influence people and gain their trust comes from I had a man that gained my trust every single day, with all his flaws and all the crap he did wrong, and along with the horrible stuff he taught me. Not horrible like morally wrong, just bad teaching. There's things he didn't know. My mom that raised me taught me about loyalty and about what it means to act like you love somebody, not just to tell them. Those are my first two mentors. When you come out from there, the next set of mentors that I had were my teachers. I had people like my football coaches, right? They were huge mentors for me, some better than others. But the ones who were great know who they are. And they know that because I'm still connected with those guys. And so these are people who shaped the man that I became. These are people who came to our friends' weddings when we started growing up, right? So then the next level was I had college professors who mentored me. I was in ROTC in college, so my senior instructors and my enlisted instructors were huge mentors to me, especially the enlisted instructors. For those of you that don't understand the military, there's officers and enlisted. And my enlisted instructors raised me. They taught me what it meant to be a soldier because they knew when I started, I wasn't going to go through a lot of what the people I was leading were going through. Blah, 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 blah. Fast forward to, there's mentors all around you. You just have to figure out what is it that you're trying to accomplish and who has a skill set, whether it's at work or it's in your family or it's people that you can meet in your area, that they can pour into you. Like coming on calls like this is a form of mentorship. I may not be mentoring any of you directly. Some of the people who are in my private programs do get more one-on-one mentorship. Like Terrence, who's here tonight, or the Jolly Mage. I did a whole audit of his entire YouTube channel from a marketing perspective. So he's getting that one-on-one mentorship. But, one of the best ways to get mentors is to pay for them, right? You guys have heard me talk about Ty Lopez. He's got some good programs that I've paid for. It was because of him that I got to meet Joel Salatin. Or better yet, it's because of him that I even knew who Joel Salatin was and then was inspired. And so the way I met Joel Salatin as kind of not so much a mentor as someone that I went to see and learned from. I call him a mentor because I've learned so much from him in the short time we spent. And I've read his books. Books is another great way to have mentors. And, once I knew who he was and I realized he lives a couple hours from me. I told my wife, was like, you want to go meet him? I'm like, what? Yeah. So we packed the kids in the car and went to meet Joel. And that was last year, actually around this time last year. And so there's a million different ways you can meet a mentor, but depending on what you want to be mentored in, you can pay for it. You can find people in your inner circle. You can find people in your extended family and friends who are doing something that you want to learn, and just offer them value. And if you don't have money to give people, offer to do work for them. And one of my primary business mentors, I tell him all the time, is there anything I can do for your company for free? And he's like, no, man, just keep learning and keep growing. It's like, that's all I care about. So lots of ways to meet mentors. Great question. Let's see. All right. Anyone that you can contact periodically that can guide you can be considered a mentor. B is mine, but I'm in Texas and he isn't. Yeah. So you can have, hey, B, Raven Selenite asks, okay, got that question. Pascal says, do you think God provides a mate that complements your strengths and shortcomings? And then Pascal says, question for later, what you need to have in place before start thinking about marriage, which is the topic we're supposed to be discussing tonight. So let's get into that. Do I think God provides you with a mate that complements your strengths and shortcomings? Yes. Short version of that answer is very much. What I want to caution people against is believing that somehow God is going to force upon you this person that you need to spend millions of hours in prayer to figure out exactly who he or she is. Right? The one thing you have to remember is that God gave you a certain level of autonomy, and he gave you dominion of this earth in Genesis chapter 1. Again, if you're a Bible-believing person. And so there are decisions you're going to make that God can certainly influence, but at the end of the day, what God is going to respect, honor, and bless is your faith. So a lot of decisions he's going to leave up to you. Now, he'll leave you some breadcrumbs and be like, this could be a good call. But don't get into thinking that there's only one person on this earth that could possibly be the right person for you. Because chances are there's more than one person who could suit you as a mate. Otherwise, if you got married and let's say, heaven forbid, your spouse passed away, why would you ever marry someone else if there was only one person on earth who could possibly suit you in a marriage? Okay, obviously there's people that will suit you better than others. And I do believe that God does, as Scripture says, order our steps, but it's really up to us to make the decision. But that's a great question. Question for later, what do we need to have in place? What do we need to have in place? So, getting to the topic at hand for tonight. And keep the questions coming, guys, ladies and guys. These are really, really awesome questions. So, what do we need to have in place to prepare for, and let's start with prepare for long-term relationship that we're going to build into a marriage. Because what I want to caution, or what I want to encourage people with, is you don't need to already be married to have these discussions, okay? Especially when I say the marriage experience with the Good Life Playbook, it isn't just for married couples. It's even for single people who want to learn how to prepare to be married, and then how to find a mate, how to build a relationship properly with a potential mate, and then ultimately to pull the trigger, and then how do we develop the marriage once we've laid all these foundational pieces. But one of the core things, the main thing I will encourage every person who is single to do when you're looking for your significant other is to make sure first you understand some things about you. Okay, so you're going to need to understand who you are as a person, meaning what is your personality type is a part of who you are. And then what are your personal values? Okay, what are the things that you hold near and dear to your heart that you're not willing to compromise on? Okay? So knowing who you are is partially knowing how your mind and your biology work, and that can be fleshed out through personality testing. I love to do personality tests with folks because there's curiosity and there's self-discovery there that I think it's really it's fun to learn about yourself. The risk with personality type tests is that there's a tendency when you get a question to want to answer it the way, like you want to answer it the way you want to give the right answer instead of giving the honest answer. Everybody struggles with that. Every time I take a personality test, I have to check myself and really honestly be like, okay, am I really like this, or do I just want to be like this and I want to write it down on the paper because I don't want me or anybody else to know I'm not really as good as I think I am, right? So there's always that risk. The tests are going to have a certain margin of error. One, because psychology is not an exact science. It's not physics, right? It's not like measuring gravity. Psychology, I always argue, and smarter people than me may argue against this, but that's okay. That's why we're having the discussion. I believe our personality is a moving target a lot of times. I think we have preferences. I think we do have default settings, but those change and grow over time. I'll give you an example. On the Myers-Briggs test, I am an extrovert. So my default setting is extrovert, but I can tell you because I have been taking the Myers-Briggs test for almost 20 years, right? And I've been administering it with people for God knows how long too. When I started, I was a max extrovert on the scale, okay? I was 98, I think, out of 100%. When I test now, I'm somewhere in the realm of 83. That means as I've gotten older, my preferences have changed. Now, at my core, my default setting is still extroverted, but when I'm being really honest with myself, I'm not as extroverted as I used to be. Another example, my military experience gave me skills and capabilities that I didn't have naturally. So even though I am an intuitor or an N-type, I developed a lot of cognitive abilities and natural abilities that are more associated with someone who is a sensor or an S-type. So anyway, I'm saying all that to say, you want to take the personality test, but you want to take them with a slight grain of salt, okay? Because they're not, you do not want to pigeonhole yourself. And there's a lot of studies, there's tests that are coming out now, like if you've been on Match.com, I believe their test does this. It factors in biology, not just psychology, which is kind of it's not as exact. Psychology is trying to measure perception, whereas biology can actually measure levels of hormones in your body. And if you have a certain level of testosterone, then you may have a tendency towards a certain personality, if you will. So tying biology and psychology together, there are tests that are doing better. But the point is, and what the folks, I can't remember the lady's name, I talked about her on another video, who made the test for Match.com, said basically that one of the problems with the Union Myers-Briggs test and tests like them is that they're not measuring biology, so people who take them have a tendency to want to pigeonhole themselves. Well, I am exactly this. You exist on a scale. And there's been people that argue with me on that. I'm just telling you what I've observed and what I've seen and what I've read and what I subscribe to based on my experience. So take it with a grain of salt. But you want to take those personality tests because there will be some self-discovery there. There'll be things about you didn't know that you'll discover. And the more you take the test, the more I have found that the more I've taken the test, the easier it is for me to be completely honest, because I'm becoming more comfortable with myself and I'm not insecure or self-conscious about things. And I really get to know myself to the best that I can. And then once you know those things about you, it's about understanding. I got a low battery. Let me make sure. Oh, nope, I'm not plugged in. That's why we have a low battery. Hopefully we're not going to lose the stream over this. Bear with me, folks, if you will. Okay, that should fix our little problem there. Let's get this out of here. All right, there we go. So my wife is ENFJ, by the way, for those of you who are commenting on what my wife's personality type is. She is an ENFJ. I was wrong on the video I did where I called her an ENFP. Anyway, I just never went back and changed the video because the whole time I'm talking about ENFP, it doesn't make any sense. Where was I? So you want to know yourself, okay? You want to know who you are, what makes you you. But part of you is not just your psychology, it's also your values. What are those core tenets that are a part of your human soul that you're not willing to compromise on? Because if you know those, the advice that I give to everybody across the board, this doesn't change based on, and this is the beauty, this doesn't change based on personality or temperament or likes and dislikes, or I like women with red hair. None of this matters. Your values. You have got to know what your values are. You've got to know the things that you will not compromise on. Because once you know that, then you need to know anybody that you are looking at as a potential mate, you better make sure the values are very close. Don't necessarily have to be exactly one for one the same, but they better be close. So advice that I give people a lot of times, because I'll get asked, is, hey, I'm a Christian and I'm really interested in this atheist dude. No, it's fine to have atheist friends. I have a ton of them. But when you're talking about building a marriage, if you are a devout Christian and they are a devout atheist, you're headed down a road of straight up conflict. And I don't care how accepting you are. I'm very accepting of people. I live and I let people live. I don't call my atheist friends up and Bible beat them to death. They live how they want to live. But when I need to make decisions in my home, especially decisions that in my life are spiritual decisions, I need to make sure that my wing woman is on the same page with me. And, religion is a tough one because it can be offensive, but anything, like if you are a devout vegan and you think eating animals is 100% wrong, probably don't want to date that bodybuilder dude who's paleo, if that's something that you can't compromise on. Now, if it's not a value that's set in the kind of the stone of your heart and you're willing to compromise, that's fine. But you need to make sure as you're preparing yourself that the person you are trying to sync up with shares those values. So you need to spend a lot of time understanding your psychology, your personality, your temperament, and then understanding your values. And if you don't know your values, you got to do some soul searching. And you need to take a look, step outside of your life and watch how you behave in different situations to understand, oh, my values are probably this. Okay? Those are things that are going to help you greatly. Now, I missed a ton of comments while I was running my mouth. But those are things you do need to have in place. And there's more. There's a ton of stuff that we're going to be talking about in the marriage experience program. Which, oh, by the way, as a gift to everybody who is on the show tonight. So before you leave, actually, I wouldn't leave, because at the end of the show, I am going to be offering you access to the Marriage Experience Good Life Playbook program for a 57% off what the price is going to be after this call. Like, in fact, Jolly will probably put the link in the comments here, and the link is actually in the description of the video as well, for the Good Life Playbook Marriage. Or actually, the link is wrong because it says coming soon, but Jolly knows where the link is. The bottom line is I've set it up now so that you'll get the same price that like the early adopters got, which was 57% off. I decided to extend that for tonight's call. After tonight's call, we're going to take the price up to the regular price. So if you're interested in getting this more interactive, we have a private Facebook group where we can talk to one another in a more private setting. It's not completely private, but it's with people who are signed up for the program just like you, where you may feel more comfortable sharing, if you're comfortable with it, sharing more personal things. There's always the option to send me a DM on Facebook. A lot of people that follow me do that if you have a really personal question that you don't want out in public space, and that's a great place to do that. So if you're getting value out of these live discussions and out of the daily videos that I do, rest assured that you're going to get 100 times that value in the program with the stuff that I'm teaching in there and going through. Because here in these talks, I give you an overview. Basically, I just walked you through personality types. In the program, I take the test. I show you where to go take it, what pages to read once you've taken the test, other things you should be studying once you've taken the test, and if you have a mate in mind, here's something you should be studying based on who your mate is. Let me make sure my phone is still plugged in. Anyway, so definitely stick around to the end of the show. We'll be linking you up to that. Actually, Jolly can provide you with the link now if you just want to pull the trigger and then come back and listen to the rest of the call. You can do that as well. Now, let's jump in here. Jolly says, single and looking to become the man that I want to be to provide value to my significant other. Exactly right. Tae-seon, am I saying that right? Tae-seon? Bryant, have you looked into Jung's cognitive function? That is much more accurate way. Oh, yeah, of course. Clearly, you're probably new to the channel. I have tons of videos on cognitive functions. And your cognitive functions are the same since birth? Sure, I can get behind that. But again, I think a lot of Union's research altogether is the challenge with a lot, even the cognitive functions, is we're still trying to pigeonhole people. And I always caution against that. Yes, my cognitive functions line up with who I am, but I'm also a person who's consciously aware of the cognitive functions I'm weak in, and I've worked to develop those. So a lot of times when people meet me, they think I'm a different personality type than I actually am, because I have developed the ability, since I know I'm lacking in a cognitive function or I don't use it at all, I've developed a way to behave as if, basically, if I know someone else has a cognitive function that I'm weak in, I can adjust my behavior and my manner of speech in order to reach them directly. And part of that has to do with I'm in sales, so I need to understand how to speak to people. But I think human beings, much like we can adjust our genes, our biology over time, I think we can adjust our psychology as well. I'm a firm believer that that's the case because I've watched myself do it. I don't have science necessarily for hundreds of years to back up that claim, so take it with a grain of salt. But you're right. I do like the cognitive functions because it goes into greater detail. It helps explain things a lot better than just your introvert, extrovert, etc., etc. So I'm definitely a fan of the cognitive functions. I use it quite a bit in the teaching here. Let's see. Thank you for sharing, brother. Keep up the good work. He's using you in a mighty way. Thank you. Undeservingly blessed. That's a great name. Let's see. Sean Prater, I know I've already had a couple experience with those ENFPs. Fatima says, awesome. So number one is know yourself before. Noted. That's why I can't wait to start doing video Enneagram types. Yeah, so the one of the primary philosophies I use in everything I do comes from Sun Tzu in The Art of War. It's the general that knows him or herself. Obviously, he didn't say herself. I don't know that there were any female generals during his time. But the general that knows him or herself and his or her enemy will never be endangered in 100 encounters. Fast forward to 2017, here's how I would say that. The person who knows themselves intimately and knows the problems that they are working to solve in their life, like knows the problem well, what caused the problem, why the problem is the way it is, and the steps to overcome it, that person is all but guaranteed success in what they're trying to do. There's nothing to stop them when you know that. So I focus a lot. I don't tell people who they are. It's not my place. I'm not qualified to judge a person's personality. I can guess a lot of times based on behaviors, and sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm not. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing here is really kind of a Morpheus move where I'm just introducing you to the fact that the Matrix exists. Now it's your job to study everything you can about the Matrix and do your own self-discovery. So what do we have? Undeservingly Blessed says, a godly man is always true. Thank you. Pascal says, okay, close values, not exact. That works for me. Helps loosen my stomach. So yeah, I mean, if you have a wife that's a vegetarian and you're a meat eater and there's not like a moral thing about it, like this, you shouldn't eat meat because it's evil. I just eat vegetarian because it's really, really healthy. And then I'm a bodybuilder, so I eat a lot of meat for protein. That's fine. Like, that's not a values problem. That's just a preference problem. But like I said, if you meet someone that's like, I don't eat meat because it's evil, that's one of my core tenets as a human being. If you are someone that's not going to, like, if you can't compromise and become a vegan, and I don't suggest you become one just to appease a potential mate, those are the things. Or like I always use the religious example because it's the easiest one to say, look, if you have two fundamental, like the core of what you believe about the universe is different than this person, meaning the way you're going to make decisions is based upon a spiritual program versus a person over here who believes there's no such thing, then there's inevitably going to be, in a marriage. Now, in a friendship, there's really no conflict because friends don't necessarily have to enter into things like raising children and deciding which course of action is right for a child, right? Then the two people who are together are making decisions that affect another human being. If it's two friends who get together, hang out and play Xbox and have a ball together, totally, like some of my closest friends are atheists. Family members are atheists. We get along like peas in a pod, man, because I let them do their thing. They let me do mine. I'm not trying to convince them I'm right. They're not trying to convince me that they're right. In fact, we have some really deep conversations and ask each other to consider things that we hadn't thought of, and it expands our minds. But I wouldn't marry that person because, again, a lot of my decisions that I make on this earth for me are spiritually driven. And if I'm with a person who can't get behind that, then you're just going to have conflict. It's not that you can't like each other or even love each other. It's that you're going to have conflict that puts a constant roadblock and strain on the relationship. Pascal says, I have those same values. No smoking, no drinking, must believe in God, no kids, or at least willing to have more. Cool. Sean says, I'm one of his followers, but may have to go back to those early videos. I must have missed who you guys were talking about with following people. Let's see. Oh, this thing is you guys are leaving great comments and questions. Thank you so much. Very appreciative that everyone's so active. Let's see. Nina Dreamy says, is it bad to be Christian, believing in God? I don't really go to church. Doing everything as good as you can, still a virgin, and not wanting a kid? No, I don't think there's anything inherently bad about not wanting a kid. I imagine you may be thinking about scriptures that say, blessed is the man whose quiver is full, and quiver being full is a metaphor for having children. But I don't think there's a converse scripture that says cursed is the man who doesn't have that, right? So I don't think it's necessarily inherently bad to not want kids. It may be that you were wired. I mean, Jesus didn't have any children. So if it were bad to not have kids, the dude we're supposedly following, we'd have some issues. So no, I don't think that's bad at all. I think that's, if you're honest with yourself and that's something that you really are adamant that you don't want to do. And I know people like that in my life. Like they want no children or maybe just one. And that's cool. That's what works for them. Maybe you are wired to do something on this earth that requires you not to have children pulling away time from. It may just be part of what you're here to do. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about that at all. Jolly says, please consider subscribing to the mailing list as well, because B makes free daily motivational videos that offer so much info that goes hand in hand with the Good Life Playbook. Yes, indeed. And actually on the YouTube channel, if you go up to the top, the little monkey icon is my mailing list. You can join it there too. Undeservingly Blessed says, what's appropriate behavior if you want a relationship with a separated woman, not yet divorced due to state law? I don't think. Why is there a need to pursue a relationship with someone who's not finished severing the ties of a relationship that they're in? What's the rush, I guess I would ask. You know what I mean? Because then I would imagine, I've never done this or lived through it, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but what is there really to gain by rushing that relationship instead of just being patient and waiting for things to be resolved? You know what I mean? Like I don't know what the upside of rushing into a relationship with someone who's separated would be, other than physical, which may be your motivating force. If that's the case, I'm probably not the right person to advise you based on what I talked about in the beginning of the video. But let's see. Tons of comments. I love it, y'all. Thank you so much. Let's see. How do you build up a cognitive function? My last one is TE. So I don't know if build up the cognitive function is necessarily the right term. For me, it's about, I am aware of the fact that I do not have extroverted feeling. My wife leads with extroverted feeling. I lead with extroverted thinking. And so feeling and thinking are decision-making processes. A lot of people misunderstand and they think feelers, they're hypersensitive and everything's about emotion. It's not about emotion. It's about, they make decisions based either on personal values or how things are going to affect people that they care about. And so knowing that about my wife, I'm not necessarily becoming an awesome extroverted feeler. I'm just aware of the fact that I lack it, and I can adjust my behavior to make sure that what I'm saying to her and decisions that I'm making are respecting the fact that that's what she leads with, right? So I don't know that my extroverted feeling that's really non-existent is becoming stronger necessarily, but I can adjust behaviors because I'm aware that it's something that I lack. And I can behave like an extroverted feeler is what I'm saying. It helps you become like a Casanova type chameleon person. You learn things like that also in How to Win Friends and Influence People. You just learn how to speak other people's languages. That's what I really mean by that. It's respecting the fact that I'm around a lot of extroverted feelers and introverted feelers, and I need to be very careful that the decisions I make respect the group and respect the values. Because I lead with thinking. I'm very much more outcomes driven than I am values driven, right? So like when you look at how people vote, a lot of times when people get angry in political discourse, a lot of times it has to do with two people's values are doing this, whereas I'm looking at the outcomes. Like if we do this, there may be some values that get bruised, but if they're values that I'm willing to compromise, no big deal. But for a person who lives and leads, say, with their values, it's very hard to have that conversation with them. So I either avoid it or I adjust, and I become empathetic to, I understand how this makes you feel. I understand that you feel your values have been trampled on by, say, a President Trump or a President Obama, depending on what side of the road people are on. And you develop empathy that way. So I basically work on weaker cognitive functions, and I don't spend a ton of time on it. I focus on my strengths. I get it. I am strong at understanding how to put together a strategic vision that's driven by outcomes and executing, influencing and motivating people to help us get it done. I'm the consummate commander. That's why that's the nickname for my personality type. So I know that's my strength, spending a lot of time developing my FI, my introverted feeling. It's not going to serve me that well, but I develop it enough to where I'm not bruising people as we're winning the war. I don't want to beat my troops to death emotionally. All right, so that's kind of how I see that. Let's see. Thanks for that, Morpheus. All right, Sean says, how do your beliefs influence how you raise your children? Directly. Very, very simply. My beliefs affect everything I do, not just raising children. MG Toe MBTI says, mate, I really like you and share some of your personal values. But again, too much ENTJ kindness is a bad thing. They are not hypersensitive. They are manipulative. I'm sorry. He changed here. Let's see what we got here. Too much ENTJ kindness is a bad thing. What's your take on Machiavellian view on life and NFP manipulation? So I tend to avoid the stereotypes that we throw at personality types, and that may sound hypocritical because I just did a whole series on how INFPs can be perceived as hypersensitive. But that was more to expose the stereotypes than to pledge my allegiance to them. So when you look at Machiavellianism, that is people who develop a misleading or manipulative trait in their personality. But I don't necessarily think that's always wired to psychology so much as it's wired to biology. So for example, if you take a person who's been viciously abused and take their personality type out of the equation, chances are that person is going to have Machiavellian traits because they've learned to survive by manipulating and lying. So if they've been getting around an abusive parent or an abusive sibling, by manipulating those people, that is a learned survival tactic. So it's not necessarily just related to the fact, oh, you're an NFP, that must mean you have a tendency to be manipulative. I don't necessarily believe that. I believe more along the lines of life experience. A lot of times is what will drive that Machiavellian nature, because our biology wants to survive, and it wants to survive ultimately by any means necessary, right? And our genes, short of hurting another human being, because our genes don't like that, contrary to what popular opinion would tell you about how everybody's out to get you and blah, blah, blah. It's just not true. So I don't necessarily attribute, and sure, I think you could probably find correlations between INFPs or NFPs and manipulation. But again, I think those would just be more correlation than because you're an INFP, that's why you're wet. I wouldn't attribute causation to that. Let's see. How do I keep a person in line? I don't. If I'm around a person I need to keep, and this is still the same person, MGTO, MBTI, I don't keep people in line. I can't keep people in line. It's impossible. If I'm in a situation where I need to keep somebody in line, I need to get that person out of my life. Period. Because self-governance is the only type of governance that really exists. I can't force my kids to behave. Now, I can use physical force and make them do something, but the minute I let them up, if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. So forcing somebody to do something or keeping them in line, I don't believe in it. If I've got to keep a person in line, I need to keep a person off my team. If you have no ability to self-govern yourself in a way that's going to be beneficial to the group, God love you. I wish the best for you, but you just won't be on my team. You won't be in my circle, and you won't be in my social circle. So that's, I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that's how I do it. I am quick to, when I assess that a person is a psychopath or manipulative, or they just have no desire to be of service, like they don't have a servant's heart, dog, they're done. They're not going to exist in my space. Jolly Mage B, earlier question from Sean. How does an ENTJ and an ENFP live together under the same roof? Explain a day in the life. Okay, so my wife is an ENFJ, but I think I explained. The easiest way to break it down, she leads with extroverted feeling, which means every decision she makes has everything to do with everyone in the house. So she's not going to make a decision that's going to hurt someone in the house emotionally or even cause them discomfort. I'm a TE, so I lead with outcomes. I'm willing for my child to be slightly disappointed and go to bed hungry because he didn't eat what his mom cooked. So he'll remember tomorrow when he wakes up, maybe I should probably eat dinner and not be a spoiled brat. She struggles with that. So How do I handle it? I don't. She's the one that cooked it. If she wants to make them all different dishes, it's not my job to get in there and change the way she lives. One of the things you're going to find that those who've been around are starting to hear me preach about this a lot. Your values, your ability to accept people, your ability to tolerate people, and your ability to develop empathy for other people is going to take you way further than trying to mathematically figure out how two personalities can fit together. If you develop those 4 things, literally any 2 personality types can figure it out. Now, granted, sure, there are personality types who are going to be slightly, in most cases, better suited for one another. But honestly, if you can get rid of your own selfishness and learn to think with the other person's welfare in mind, regardless of your cognitive functions or any of that stuff, if you can learn to accept a person as they are, because even Jung talked about this when he said, not opposites, but complements attract and are fascinated by one another. And do opposites and complements work together in a relationship? Yes, as long as neither one of them tries to change each other. And what I find when I'm helping people with personality stuff is they're trying to figure out, how do I get this person who doesn't behave the way I want them to behave the way I want them to behave, and you don't. You become the person who, like, this is how the universe works. Whether you're a Christian or whatever, you plant a tree and a tree grows and bears fruit. Right? So if you want change to exist in your situation, you are the one that has to change. And I've seen this happen so many times throughout my life. When I adjust and I become more agreeable and I become more empathetic and I become more willing to bend and serve, everyone around me becomes the same. So if you're the one that's identified the problem, you're the one that needs to change. Maybe not what you want to hear. Like I always tell people, if you're angry, it's your fault. Because you are in control of what you perceive. And if somebody did, like, one of my boys used to always get mad. He would road rage. Anytime somebody cut him off in traffic, and shaking the horn and screaming at people, I'm like, dude, why are you having a nervous breakdown over this dude? Like, this dude is clearly a jerk, but he's turning you into a basket case. And so, like, he would literally get mad at me if I was driving and someone would cut me off. I wouldn't honk. And I'll explain why in a second. He would reach over across the car and start honking the horn for me. And I'm like, what is your problem, bro? He's like, you need to let that guy, I don't need to let that guy know anything. Him being a jerk is not my problem. So why would I waste the limited amount of glycogen I have in my brain on having an emotion that's just, this dude doesn't understand that he shares earth with other people? The fact that he's a jerk is not my fault. Why am I going to get my blood pressure up? Because he's the one with the problem. The minute I get angry and start cussing and yelling at him and honking my horn, I'm the dude. Now, I'll honk my horn if someone's getting ready to cause a problem. That's what the horn was for. But using the horn to show you I'm mad and you need to know it, they don't. First of all, that dude doesn't care about you. That's why he cut you off. You think the horn is going to teach him a lesson? Come on. You know what I mean? And, I was having that conversation at 16. Like, this wasn't 2 adults talking. This is 2 kids. Like, you're wasting your emotional energy on things you can't control. You're the one that needs to adjust. You're the one that needs to remember, oh, I live on an earth of people that don't really care about me. They care about spreading their own genes. And what if this dude literally is trying to get his wife to the hospital who's about to have a baby? Like, you don't know his situation. Or maybe if he's late for work today, someone's going to literally punch him in the face. We don't know. So you're adding to his jerkism, and then in the process, you're making yourself angry. So if you're the one that's angry, you're the one that has the problem. Because you ultimately have control over how you feel. It's just the reality. All right, so I'm not saying that these questions mean that's what you're asking, but I know that because I feel the same way. I'm like, man, how can I learn my wife's personality type so I can get her to do this thing I really want her to do? When the truth of the matter is, it's like, if I want her to do that, then I need to do the equivalent of what that is to me for her. Right? If I want her to do this thing for me that's really important, that in her world it doesn't really come on her radar, then I need to figure out the thing that is on her radar, go do that for her, and then she will reciprocate. You sow, then you reap. All right? Cool. Great question. All right. Undeservingly Blessed says, we have been friends for 30 years, never crossing that boundary, not even a little bit, but abstaining from even the appearance of evil seems to be the appropriate action. Thank you. Absolutely. That's exactly what I was saying. Exactly. Like, just until that thing is, just avoid the appearance of evil. Let's see. Sarin or Bless, or Saren, not sure how to say that. Pascal, gross. Good God. Come on, guys. Let's be adults. Oh, man. Let's see. I like your parenting style. Understandable. Just trying to keep the chat clean. Yeah, it's cool, y'all. It's nobody's gonna throw you out of here for saying the word balls, but be cool. I have kids that watch. Believe it or not, I have kids that come on these streams. Sometimes they're my kids, but I use the word balls in front of my kids, so it's not gonna. My kids are used to that. I mean, what else are you supposed to call them? Anyway. Okay. Anyone need any links to B social pages? I don't want to spam you guys. Excellent attitude, turning the other cheek, especially with those we love. Yeah, and it's turning the other cheek, but it's also, you got to understand, you only get so much energy every day. Don't waste it on things that don't matter. Like, the reason why Mark Zuckerberg wears the same thing every day is because he has to make billion-dollar decisions. You think he's going to waste that brain power trying to figure out which tie am I going to wear today? No, dude. Like, I don't have enough mental. He's smart enough to know that he only gets so much energy every day, and he's got to use it on things that really matter. Not majoring in minors, as Tony Robbins would say. So Pascal says, how do I grow? So let's get out of the realm of cliches like grow balls, man up. Let's forget all of that, because the truth of the matter is there's no such thing. Whoever's telling you to man up has their own definition of what that means. I use it sometimes, but when I say man up, I'm telling people not to be emotionally lazy. And not to waste their energy. Like, I would have told my boy, man up, dude. Like, be a freaking grown up and stop losing your ish because someone was a jerk. But when I say man up, what I'm really saying is develop the emotional and mental discipline to do the right thing. The problem that I run into with INFP men is that they've been told their whole life they're too sensitive. At least the few that I've worked with here. It's not like I'm talking to millions of INFP men, but the ones that I've encountered in a very short time since I started this channel have been, I feel like I'm not assertive enough. I feel like I'm not the alpha in a relationship with a female. And these are all things that, one, you don't know the definition because of the way you're using it, and who told you that you had to be the alpha? And do you think I'm the alpha in my house? Are you kidding me? All of these people tell me what to do. I'm not the alpha. There's no boss. And I'm going to tell you, as a person who's put together 15 years of a happy marriage, I knew coming in that I wasn't the boss or the alpha. I need to establish my dominance. Who told you that nonsense? Not a single relationship that's healthy, marriage, friendship, or otherwise, has an alpha. Has the person who's in charge or the one who's asserting their dominion. That's BS. Look, if you're an INFP, you're a mediator, you're a peacemaker, right? You don't have extroverted thinking as your first cognitive function like I do. So I look assertive on the surface. I look like if someone says something to me, I might knock them out. But the truth of the matter is I wouldn't. I got into an argument with a guy who told me about getting called the N-word. And he was like, man, if that happened to me, I'd have punched that dude in the face. I said, why? That makes you a child. I said, frankly, dude, you are what you answer to. And he got mad at me. He's like, well, if you got called the N-word, you'd fight too. I said, first of all, I've been called the N-word from everybody from teachers to, not teachers, I'm sorry, from children and children's parents, all the way to 4 guys in a freaking pickup truck who looked like they just came off a farm, yelling it at me and throwing up the middle finger. All right, so please, save it. Did I chase those dudes down and fight? No, in fact, my reaction was laughter, because I thought it was really interesting that 4 guys that looked like they couldn't spell the N-word were making fun of me for being ignorant, right? And I'm a firm believer you are what you answer to. I'm not an N-word. So why would I react like an idiot because somebody called me one? You can't be so quick to freaking flare up, man. A samurai never unsheaths his sword when he's fighting an opponent that's unworthy of him. In fact, he won't fight. Simple as that. So, you are what you answer to. Period. You're teaching people how to treat you by the way you behave. So, when people tell you to man up, you know what the problem? It's their problem. They have a problem with the fact that you behave a certain way. Guess what? It's great news. Great news for you, homie. If someone's telling you that, now granted, if you're having a friend that's telling you, yo, dude, you need to stop whining. Like, when I tell people to man up, it has to do with complaining and whining. My 2 most hated things on the planet are whiny people. And my kids do it all the time. So I always tell my kids to man up. But it has nothing to do with this false bravado or perception of manliness. It has to do with accept life on life's terms and then bend life to your will. Stop being soft up here and have the mental fortitude and discipline to manage your situation and change it into what you want instead of whining that it's not the way you want it. Okay? But because you have certain tendencies, you don't speak up. You don't cut people off when they're talking. You're actually polite enough to let them finish their sentence. And when people make decisions, you may be the last one to speak up. That doesn't mean you're not assertive. It just means you're not making a decision that I feel like I need to get involved in. I'm fine with having salad and chicken tonight, dear. Cool. You're not wasting emotional. So what some people may think is passiveness, I think is you don't waste emotional energy on decisions that don't matter. But here's what I believe. You catch an INFP and you screw with their values, you might get punched in the face. All that I'm not assertive stuff goes out the window if someone tries to compromise your values. Now you tell me if I'm wrong. You feel me? So, and I'm not trying to get in your face. I'm an animated person, can't help it. But I want to get rid of these stereotypes. I say all the time that the world needs to man up, but it has little to do with driving Humvees around and carrying weapons and being hard. It has everything to do with not crying every time something doesn't go the way you want it to, and having the mental discipline to discipline yourself to make yourself ready for what you want the world to be instead of whining that the world isn't what you want it to be, or instead of fussing about things, 1, you can't control, and 2, don't affect the grand scheme of the universe. I watch people have conniption fits every time something happens in politics. And it's like, are you so emotionally frail that every time a politician does something that doesn't even directly affect the way you're going to get up and live your life tomorrow? What are we fussing about? Like, instead of fussing, let's go do something about it. Let's go, you know what? If I don't like the way, and I try to do this at least once a year. If I don't like the way the homeless are being treated, I got a solution. I pack my rucksack full of sandwiches and water, and I go feed them when it's cold outside. Instead of complaining that my politicians aren't creating. Screw them. Go make the change you want to see, man. So I'm saying that, Pascal, because I want to prevent you from going into that rabbit hole if you've been stereotyped and now you start to take on this persona of I'm really this unmanly, passive person when you may not be. Just the way that you go about living your life on the surface seems more passive. And I'll give you a real life example. Most people think Michael Jordan is arrogant because he talks a lot of smack. Funny thing is he backs up a lot of smack. But when you talk to his coaches and his players, they tell a different story about a man that listens to everything they told him. And when they made suggestions, he carried them out, even when he thought they were wrong. That's in his biography, his biography, by the way. You can read that yourself. That's not me, being smart. That's just reading. So, at least I think that's in his biography. I think that's where we got that from. So, people think he's arrogant, but he's not. Internally, he's more humble than most people. That's why he became as good as he was. On the outside, he had bravado and manliness, but it wasn't manliness or arrogance. It was just cockiness. That was his personality. But on the inside, it was, I have to do, when he got to the NBA, they told him his jump shot wasn't good enough. He's like, okay, I'll do 1,000 jump shots a day. Problem solved. Okay. I think I beat that horse to death. All right. Saren says, Pascal, man. Harvey says, you are what you answer to. Wow. Yeah, I believe that, man. You are what you answer to. And remember, perception is reality. You know, if I tell you 1 billion times that you're an ENTJ and you start believing it, you probably become one. You know, there's a scripture that says, as a man thinks, so is he. And that it's interesting that was written thousands of years ago, a couple thousand years ago, and we're listening to all these scientists now say the same thing. Or they're just coming to that discovery. Relatively speaking. I find myself getting caught up in the infamous introverted intuition, introverted thinking loop. Do you have a loop, and how do you disentangle yourself? Don't know that I have a loop per se, so I go extroverted thinking and then introverted intuition. So I guess my loop would be, and this is why a lot of times as an ENTJ you can be mistaken for an ESTJ, especially when you've developed a lot of the skills associated with the S type. So it's introverted intuition and then extroverted sensing. They're right there. So the way my brain processes information gets inside of that loop. So I can very much take a very complex thing and break it down to a simple answer. But I can also I can tell you all the details of how the Matrix was based on a book by Jean Baudrillard called Simulacra and Simulation. And Simulacra and Simulation was the book that Neo hid the software in that he gave to the person who was with the white rabbit. Thus, the book itself was a simulacra and a simulation, which he was hiding a simulacra and a simulation. I can do that, right? That's my loop. So I can go very broad and strategic, but I can also get pretty detailed if necessary. It's actually a really good mix to have for folks that do what I do. All right. Undeservingly blessed. One man's perspective isn't always another man's reality. Understanding and wisdom is the key. There it is. Okay. Man, there's a lot of comments. I love you guys, man. This is cool. All right, so MG Toad just listed a bunch of personality types and says, and many, many more tried to usurp power time and time again. Might because, so again, at MG Toad, I would avoid the stereotyping. That's the best advice I can give you, my friend, is I believe you are using correlation as causation and saying these personality types do this thing, but I'm sure you could find examples where people of that personality type do not. Like I can tell you, my wife as an ENFJ has never tried to usurp power at all. Jolly Mage says, I have a question. What is your views on some women saying that they want the man to be the head of the house, hold, or take charge? Is that being an alpha? How would a man be said head of the house? So head of the house is also taken from biblical teachings. So my answer to that is always, when the scripture basically that we take it from is wives, submit to your husbands. And then right after that, it tells husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. So let's be clear. When we're talking about head, we're talking about spiritual responsibility, not boss. Okay, so at the end of the day, when I was in command of a group of people, I was no better or higher than the group. And in fact, when you're the leader of a group, you're the commander, you're actually the servant of the group when it works properly. Okay, everything you do is for the betterment of the group, not for your own interest. This is why I can't stand politicians. I can't stand politics. Let me say I don't have a problem with people. You as the commander are the servant to the group, but I'm what the head of the group means isn't that I'm just the boss and you do what I say because I'm in charge. You get stupid people that lead that way. But as the head, I am ultimately responsible. I'm the steward of what happens. So heaven forbid if one of my men had been hurt or killed, I would have been held responsible for that because I had been given special charge to care for these people, right? And the husband, in scripture terms, has that same spiritual responsibility. But the problem is we try to take that spiritual responsibility that God is ultimately going to hold us responsible as stewards of the family for everything that happens in the family. But rest assured, remember, when two people get married, they become one flesh. So the wife is going to be held responsible as well. People mistake that and try to turn it into a natural thing where, oh, I'm the man of the house. That means I'm the head. That means I'm the boss. That means you're to submit to me, woman. Go thy way and make thy dinner and shine my shoe. Like, men used a misunderstanding of Scripture as a means, I believe, to manipulate and to control. Okay, and so head, really, because you've heard the Scripture as well. I'm going to make the first will be last and the last will be first. Interesting concept. When you're the commander of a unit, you eat last, because the welfare of your soldiers is more important than your own. Okay, and so the man is a spiritual metaphor for what God represents to all of humanity. Okay, so it's a man in a family, not man to. I don't represent necessarily God to all of humanity, but in a marriage, in a family, I'm the metaphor for how God serves us. You know, and when you look at if I'm to love my wife as Christ loved the church, this is where that scripture comes from, then newsflash, everybody, Christ went up on a cross and suffocated. Okay, that's how you die when you're crucified. All right, he didn't die from bleeding or from pain. He died because his lungs got crushed in that situation. So, are you willing to get up on a cross and have your lungs crushed? Because then you could be the boss. Anybody will follow you if you're willing to do that. You see what I mean? And so, man has turned it into this very natural, you are to do what I say. And it just doesn't work, man. My wife is an integral part of the decision making that happens in the house. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not in charge of her. I don't come home and say, you are to submit to me, so these are the things that you will do. We're a team. We're one flesh. We are one. Right? So when it comes to your question in terms of, is that being the alpha? No. What I'm saying is there's no alpha in the sense that I'm the one that's controlling. I control very little in this house. Anybody and so, it's great that you asked this, because I know you're not married. Just wait. One day you'll be married. Everything I'm saying will make sense. I see a lot of biblical scholars will very semantically break down what I'm saying and shoot holes in it. And that's cool if you want to get into harmolytics and hermeneutics and that type of stuff. But I just like to be practical about it. Dog, I've been married 15 years. Ain't nobody in here submitting to no rule that I'm putting in place. Now, my kids don't even submit to my rule. My 3-year-old today was like, I ain't doing that, Dad. You sit down. What am I going to do that? You find out how little authority you really have over the decisions of human beings when they live in a house with you, is what I'll say. So, great question. But to be the head of the house, you're going to serve your house. So, here's a cool thing. Here's how I love to paint this in a marriage. When you're a senior person in the military, and you're walking next to someone who's of a lower rank, you walk one step ahead of them and to the right. They walk one step to the left of you and to the rear. Here's why. In the Roman armies, they carried their shields in their left hand, and the commander walked out in front of the troops, shield in left hand. The people who are underneath my command are to the left and to the rear of me, because I am charged with serving their protection. Meaning, if someone has to go down first, yours truly is the one taking that arrow, not me hiding behind my men. That's why that tradition still exists, right? So, and it's a tradition that makes total sense, because it's a metaphor for what a senior person means. As a senior, you're the one that takes the bullet for the group. It's not about rank, and like, we think of senior in terms of hierarchy, like you're more important. I'm not. The war doesn't happen without that person. I'm only here to make sure that person gets everything they need to win. That's what it means to be the head. It means a leader is a servant to those he leads. It's that simple. Just like when Christ came to earth, he served humanity by sacrificing his life. So that's the way you have to think about it. And if you're willing to stand up on a cross, I guarantee you, anybody in your family, if someone comes to your house tonight and says, all right, one of y'all has got to get crucified, who is it? You raise your hand, everybody in that family is going to follow you. Not follow you onto the cross, but if you happen to, resurrect after it, then guess what? They're going to follow everything you have to say, because you had the humility to put them and their needs before your own. Okay. Saren says, being able to learn from each other and help each other grow. Your mates will get you a friend's girl friend for you down the road. Okay, that must have been a sidebar conversation. So Pascal says, I'm not that tough guy that people ask me to be when they say man up. So here's the deal, guys. Just take it from the dude who's been in situations where people were trying to kill him. Being tough is not about, it's not a show. It's not about who you are on your exterior. Being tough is making the right decision for you and your people when it's hard. That's all tough is. I'll give you an example. In a war, being tough isn't sticking your chest out and going and fighting. It's finding that soldier who's struggling and having a hard time. And when he comes up to you and says, sir, what the hell are we doing here? Why are we fighting these people? And you look at him, you look that soldier in the eye and you tell him, look, man, I can't tell you your why. But at the end of the day, the reason I'm here is to make sure that you get home safe. Period. And I will dedicate myself, regardless of whatever mission we're fighting or whoever's trying to shoot us today. My number one purpose in this existence, in this foreign country that we can't wait to get out of, is making sure you and the rest of these men get home to your wives and kids and your mothers and your fathers. That's all I know. That's toughness. When a guy is struggling and he's down, you reach down and you pick him up. It's not about being able to bench press 400 and some odd pounds. I did that. Did not make me any tougher. It made me look cool for 5 minutes to other guys in the gym who are into that crap. I didn't do that for them. And I didn't do that to be tough. That makes me no tougher. There are people who can't bench press close to what I can bench press. And they will tough me under a table without saying a word. Because their tough is up here. It's not here. It's not here. It's not in how loud you talk or how assertive you are. Tough is about how you take care of the people that have been put into your life and how you treat them. It's that simple. It's that simple. Sometimes tough is emotional protection, not just physical. So let's get the stereotypes out of here. Great comments. I'm trying to catch up, y'all. I promise. I know you're way ahead of me. Jolly says, I understand the biblical term of head of the house, but it seems that a lot of my generation of women take it all the wrong way, assume that it means telling. It has nothing to do with telling. But that's what I'm saying. So many people have taught it wrong for thousands of years. When I tell people that God's original plan wasn't the 10 Commandments, they're, oh, how could you say that? Because it's written. I didn't make that up. God came to Mount Sinai to meet with the people. It was the people that asked for the commandments, not him. Boom. That's a brain teaser for you. People have been teaching stuff wrong for thousands of years. It doesn't mean they're going to stop just because it's 2017. All right, back on topic though. How to get ready to meet your husband or wife. That's a great conversation. Matt Hatter says, I think INFPs are kind of like hippies, but not enough to express it. Yeah. All right, let me see if I can get caught up here. Undeservingly blessed. Tough is being confident in your sound decisions. Mean what you be and be what you mean. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Okay. I think I'm finally caught up on questions. If I missed a question, Jolly will catch it, or you can just copy it and paste it and repost it. Now, again, going back to why we came here tonight about preparing yourself for this thing we call marriage, this lifelong journey of joy that my wife and I have been blessed to be on for the last going on 15 years. We're in year 15 now, 14 years and several months. And when I talk about getting ready, it's not about, getting your house in order and paying your bills. A lot of this stuff is cool. I got some real good advice before I got married that was pay off all your debt before you get married. I didn't listen to that, by the way. I paid off all my debt because I didn't have any. because I was a soldier who lived in an apartment with no couch. I didn't buy anything because I wasn't home a lot to care about that kind of stuff. But the it's more about getting yourself prepared, getting the you prepared. And again, that's why I get into these personality conversations, because it helps us, this self-discovery. Even though we have stereotypes and we have hang-ups about certain types and manipulation, it's all part of the conversation, and it's all part of the evolution of us understanding ourselves. Because I think that's a lifelong journey that you never really get complete. You don't take a Myers-Briggs test and all of a sudden you know exactly who you are. Because there's going to be things on the test, there's going to be things associated and correlated to your personality that don't ring true for you. That's just the reality. So if our personalities are what I consider to be these moving targets, then it's just about getting at least awareness of that your target is on the field and getting close to it, versus trying to get an exact measure of who you are. Because I think who you are is going to evolve over time. Certainly your tendencies, your preferences, your self-esteem start to come online and get established by the time you're 16. But I have learned, if you are open-minded and you are willing to be adaptable, there are things that you can change about yourself without having to compromise who you are. But there are behaviors and tendencies that you can make provision to adjust when you're in a situation where that type of adjustment is necessary. And I say all that to say, don't take these tests thinking that it's not a pass or fail. All right, there's no wrong answers. The only wrong answers are answers that are dishonest, right? And so, and any personality test you take, there's going to be parts of it where you struggle with being honest, because it's going to be a question that's forcing you to face something that you don't like about yourself. And that's why I say one of the tenets of getting ready is acceptance. Not just accepting the other person that you're going to bring into the equation, but learning how to accept yourself for who you are. Learning to accept your character defects and flaws. I learned to accept that sometimes I just come across as insensitive. It's not my intent. I just know the way I say things, especially with certain personality types of feelers, it rubs them the wrong way. And some of the decisions I make seem cold. It's not my intent. My intent is to make decisions that benefit everybody, making sure everybody wins. But it doesn't always come across that way. So, knowing that about yourself, you can learn to just say, hey, look, my strength. So, for example, I was talking to my business partner about this a couple days ago. We had lunch together. And I told him, I said, one of the reasons why I'm glad God put us in each other's lives is you bring certain things to the table that I just don't have. And I don't think any level of development is going to make me strong at it, because it's things that I don't really like. And it's putting together like social events, like putting together an event and then inviting people out to it. I suck at that. I so suck at it because I don't like it. Like, I don't like the idea of let's have a party and then we're going to invite these people and then we're going to figure out who's going to talk and we'll do a toast. And I'm like, oh, I'm already tired. Like, I loved going to social things when they were with people that I got along with and people that I liked. I'm not like a black tie event person, because why? It's not my thing, right? I'm more tactical gear and pickup trucks than I am suits, ties, and freaking black tie events. It's just kind of how I am. I get that from my dad. My mom is very much a black tie thing. That part of mom didn't rub off on me. I got the other genes from dad. But knowing those things about myself, I brought a person into my business world who is good. Like, he's already plotting this event that we're going to do where we bring all these entrepreneurs out and we help them in their businesses and thus gain some business with them. I wouldn't be good at putting that together. I'm not a great administrator. Like, administrative type work, like filling out paperwork, even emailing my clients to start the relationship. I'm never good at that part. I'm always good at the development after the fact. You know what I mean? Like, if it hadn't been for my now cousin, my wife and I might not have ever met. If I would have had to be the one to reach out to her, it's not my skill set. So my cousin set up a meeting where we came together, and I took her to a dinner at our boss's house. Thank God for him. It's her cousin. He's my cousin now because I married her. Thank God for him, because I would have never taken the initiative to probably start that situation. Because I'm not good at the build-up. I'm always good at the once we're in, laying the foundation and then building a freaking dope bomb house. Like, that's where I'm strong, is in developing the person after we get through the pleasantries and the, hi, how are you? Good morning. Oh, can we just get to the part where we have a regular conversation? I don't need the pleasantries. And I'm kidding. I don't mind people being nice to me. I'm just saying. So when you know these things about yourself, then you understand how to either bring people into your life that can help you, or how to make certain adjustments just so that you're good enough to survive. I will never spend a lot of time trying to develop my administrative skills. It's just a weakness. And if I were to spend the next 10 years trying to get good at administrative work, it's not going to happen. Like, an administrator is one of the people that I'm looking to hire in my company, hopefully in the very near future, as we continue to grow. And it's because I suck at it. Like, I need someone who lives to do process and fill out paperwork, and who's good at it and has that attention to detail that I just don't have. Like, oh crap, I misspelled this. Like, people say, like, for example, you ever hear people say, oh, that guy sent me an email with it. Like, if you sent me a resume that had a misspelling, that wouldn't be a disqualifier for me. Like, I wouldn't be, oh, this person lacks attention to detail. Like, my default setting would be, they probably got really bored filling out this crap. Let me hear what they're actually saying. The fact that they misspelled something, depending on what I'm hiring, like if I'm hiring them to be my administrative assistant, maybe that's an issue. But if I'm hiring them to be like on a team of strategic stuff where they're having to come up with ideas and build out how and build frameworks around how we're going to do this thing, not so much worried that you can't spell. I need to know that you're capable of taking very complex problems and then developing plausible solutions to them. You feel me? And so knowing yourself, and then, like I said, understanding your values. Really digging deep and understanding what are those core values that are never going to go away. I'm never going to like politics. I'm not gonna. Not at least in the way they're run here. I mean, maybe in 100 years, our political system will finally evolve. Don't see it happening. Political system favors people who are self-interested. And yes, every human being is self-interested, myself included. I get it. But the system favors self-interest. And that's what I have the bigger issue with. It's not so much the people. But, and so by the way, I'm not just jaded because of something I read on CNN or reading blogs. I have been involved in dealings with Capitol Hill, in a previous career. Not a fan of what I saw. And I have friends that work in that environment. I don't dislike them or discredit their work. What they do in a lot of cases is important. I just think there's more effective and efficient ways to do it, namely entrepreneurship. But that's for another debate. Knowing your values, knowing that I'm not going to compromise on my spiritual beliefs to appease someone else. That's something that you have to know about yourself. If you're an atheist and you know you're just not going to be swayed, then getting with someone who truly has a spiritual foundation to the way they approach their life, like getting up in the morning and reading scripture and learning from it and applying the spiritual principles and believing in things that to an atheist seem absolutely ludicrous, and vice versa, by the way. If you've ever heard of the primeval soup, I think that's the most insane thing anybody's ever come up with as a person who believes in God. But I'm not saying they're wrong. It's not my place to say that. And it's not my place to argue. But when you know these are things that you're not going to compromise, you got to know that about yourself. Then once you understand those things, you got to start developing yourself. You got to start developing skills. I'm reading a great book. I grabbed it, right? Yeah, man. This one right here, I just started reading today. It came in my mentor box. Be on the lookout for a review for mentor box. Next week, I talk about, is this thing worth $97 or essentially $100 a month? And this book about not following your passions. And there's some really great insight in here about, you got to develop skills before you chase passion, basically, is what the thesis of the book is, what I'm gathering from it right now. If I'm passionate about changing people's lives, if I have no skill set, how am I going to change anybody's life if I don't have any skills with which to change a life? So if I would have started my career trying to change lives, like if I had started this marriage program, for example, the marriage experience 15 years ago before I was married, who would have listened to me? Who would have done that? because you have no experience. Like they would listen to a person who was married 7 times and failed before they listened to a dude that was never married. Because at least the dude that failed 7 times can tell you how not to do it. That person could add value, right? And so when it comes to you, I'm not saying passion isn't important because I believe in it, but it's more understanding. When you start to understand your personality and your temperament and you start to understand your values, you're also going to come face to face with things that you are naturally good at. And when you're able to do that, then you're able to say, okay, if I'm naturally good at this thing, let me start building my skills around this thing. And as I build my skills around this thing, my passions can then be added. Because make no mistake, if I would have become an NFL football player, I could still have used that platform to change people's lives. It doesn't matter whether I'm a coach or an NFL player or a soldier. That's really not as important as me developing the abilities to do what I'm passionate about. Right? And the book talks about how Steve Jobs did not start off as a person who was passionate about technology. That came as he became an expert in the field. Guy was a hippie, dude. He walked around barefoot. Studied Western history and dance. And then he got a passion for design, and that's his passion. After he developed skills in marketing and selling and working in an industry, his love for design came through and made arguably the most profitable company that's ever existed. But he spent decades developing skills to get to that point. And so you've got to do the same thing as it relates to your relationships. When people always ask me, how do I get the girl? And the first question I ask them is, why should a girl want you? And the first thing out of your mouth is, well, I'm, looks like my plug came undone again. Did it? I don't know. We'll see. If you can't come up with 3 reasons why someone should want to be with you, then you've got to start developing some gravitas. You got to do that. Because if you don't know why anybody would want you, they're certainly not going to know. Right? You got to start developing some things about you that people, and I'm a nice person, cut it. No, you're not. Or maybe you are. But the joke I always tell, because, my biological mother for a long time was single. And she was just like, I thought this guy, he was such a nice guy. I said, Mom, when was the last time you liked a guy legitimately because he was nice? I said, when you met my wife, I said, I can guarantee you when my wife went back to tell her girls about me when we first met each other, she didn't go back and say, man, you know what I really liked about that guy? He was so nice. He's just nice. Really? That's enough to throw a ring on somebody's finger? They're nice. Ugh. No, thank you. No, she went back and said, dude, that dude is handsome. He's funny. And he's passionate. Like, he really has ambitions to do stuff in this world that's probably, if he pulls it off, he's going to change the world. I guarantee that's what she went back and told her girlfriend. And I went back to my boys. I was like, this chick is bad, dude. And one of my boys was like, you right, because I saw her picture, and you lucky I'm married. And I was like, you lucky that you bigger than me, because I should probably fight you for saying that. You know what I mean? So you have to understand what draws people to you. And if you don't have anything, you better go find and develop something. Why is a woman or a man going to want to be around you forever? What do you bring to the table? Especially when you figure that the purpose of a marriage is not happiness. I always say the purpose of a marriage is not happiness. Happiness is a byproduct of a good marriage. The purpose of a marriage is for 2 people to come together and make each other better than they could have been apart, working toward a common end. Whether that's raising a family or even if it's just cultivating a beautiful marriage where there's love and compassion. But ultimately, there's some output that's giving something better to the world. All right? So those are really the key things that I wanted to talk about, an hour and a half into our show because we spent so much time on Q&A. And I'm not saying that, I'm not complaining. The Q&A is what I live for. The Q&A is where we get the meat and we get into really helping folks. So that's really about as overviewy as I can get with the information without getting into a lot of specifics. A lot of the specifics, again, Jolly, if you'll put the link to our marriage experience for the Good Life Playbook. In our program that we have, we're going to get way into detail. Like, we start by having you, I actually take the Myers-Briggs test on camera with my little face cam there to show you me going through the test, the things I struggle with, and how I'm being honest about how I'm having trouble answering this question because I want myself to be this. I know I'm really this. So I show you the struggle so that you understand when you get into that situation. You're like, I want to answer this way, but if I'm being really, really honest with myself, this is the answer. And so we have a tendency to want to project a better version of ourselves than what really is. And not that we don't have the potential to become it, but in the moment we're not it. And so if we can be honest about it, then we can assess ourselves properly and get better results on the test. You're never going to get a perfect result. I've had tests where I came up as a P because in the moment I just was like, let's freaking get through this. But I'm a J. I know that about myself. So now then, I know I missed about 40 comments when I was saying that. How do you get people you talk to in public interested in Myers-Briggs without them thinking you're pigeonholing them? I speak in their language. I usually will, if I can assess their personality just by talking with them, I'll say something about them that I know is true. And then they're like, oh my God, that's so right. And then tell me more. So without trying to shove the test down their throat, I just talk to them. You got to remember, every human being is insanely interested in themselves. People really love themselves a lot. And if you can talk to people about themselves, they will listen to you forever. If I sit down with someone and I just talk about them and how awesome they are and what I know about them that's great, they'll listen all night. So remember that. And I'm not talking about blowing smoke up people's behind or BSing them. I'm saying legitimate things about them. They will listen to you all day. Now, what did I miss? Okay. Okay, now I'm caught up to where we were. So I'm just looking at the comments. That's why there's a brief silence here. Let's get into questions. Finding the right person. That's a comment. Good stuff. It's a relief to accept yourself. Yes, it is. This is comments from when I was talking about the black tie event. All right. I notice when people use their inferior function, they always take a deep breath, almost like they are summoning the energy to operate in this. That is a really cool observation. I'm going to add that to my tool belt when I need to read people. So if someone takes a deep breath, I'm going to test that out in my life. Thank you for sharing that. That's pretty cool. I don't know that I've ever noticed that. And it's funny that you're saying that. I think I do that. Or I think I've learned how to mask that because I'm violently self-aware. That's another thing. All of this can be summed up as being violently self-aware. And I don't mean violent like hurting people. I mean really intensely self-aware. I'm self-aware of how I come across to people. Like I can sense it on them. It's just my intuition at work. And so I adjust a lot. Even my body language, I'll adjust. So a lot of times when you guys see me on camera, when I slouch, that's not on accident. It's because if I'm trying to convey something, this is a little ninja tip for you. This is something I learned from Magic Johnson. So Magic Johnson's a very large man who's a billionaire. All right, he's a former NBA basketball player, and we used to go into these meetings where he would intimidate people because he's so large. And so what he learned was to kind of shrink himself so that he wouldn't intimidate. So when I need to get a point across that's a bit more intimate, maybe slightly hard to swallow, I can't come as the big freaking hulking bear. I'll shy a little bit. And it's totally on purpose because it's so that the audience is not distracted or pushed away because I'm coming dominant to them. Like I'm coming inward to draw them closer to me. Total ninja trick. So when you see me do those kind of winces on camera, that's practiced because that is not my personality type at all. It's me respecting the audience and understanding. And I've had this happen. I've had people come on the channel and say, when I first started watching you, you were so intimidating, right? Because I don't do it all the time. Sometimes me just comes out. But I've learned over time from that Magic Johnson situation to do the same thing. Now, I'm nowhere near as big as he is, but to most people, I'm very large. So I learned how to make myself smaller and make myself more welcoming and inviting so that people don't feel like I'm coming at them. They feel like I'm offering them something from a place of humility, right? And I do have the humility. It just doesn't come across physically. So it's almost like acting, but it's more just a practiced behavior because I know I'm addressing people who don't react to my level of intensity. My level of intensity is usually a bit much for most people, not just certain personality types, just most people in general. ENTJs, I can be me all day long. Okay, so I love the deep breath thing. Thank you, Jolly, for the shout out. Thank you, sir. So Pascal says, and I assume this was directed at me and not someone else. Let's say you are interested in a girl. How do you bring it up to her? It's sort of a strange interest. What kind of interest are you talking about before I answer that question? Keith Hayes says, I'm an INTJ who has been married for 26 years. Welcome, sir. I just like to listen to Bryant. Could use your wisdom. I believe everybody here, myself included, can learn something from you, my good man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your kind words. Pascal, throw her a curveball. Ask her about astrology. Hey, baby, what's your MBTI? So, again, let me answer this question properly. I did this in my book review on Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, you should do that. Here we go. You guys ready? I'm going to answer Pascal's question about how do I convey interest in another human being. Here's the answer. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Chapter 5, page 89. Everyone who was ever a guest of Theodore Roosevelt was astonished at the range and diversity of his knowledge. Whether his visitor was a cowboy or a rough rider, a New York politician or a diplomat, Roosevelt knew what to say. And how was it done? The answer was simple. Whenever Roosevelt expected a visitor, he sat up late the night before, reading up on the subject in which he knew his guest was particularly interested. For Roosevelt knew, this is the important part, pay attention or write it down if you take notes. Roosevelt knew, as all leaders know, that the royal road to a person's heart is to talk about the things he or she treasures most, not to talk about ourselves. So that's exactly what I was talking about earlier when I said I will sit here and talk to a person about their interests. If you're trying to convey interest in someone, be interested in them. You don't tell them about your interest, show your interest. It's better to show than to tell. And 100 times out of 100. Show interest. Show interest. What I mean is show interest in the person. Ask them about themselves. Ask them to tell you what you're interested in. What they're interested in. And then when you find something that you can speak to, give them I love this thing too. Tell me more about this thing that or here's what I know about this thing you like, and you tell me what your thoughts are on my knowledge, and boom, 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 and then tell me more about yourself, and what else, and what else. It's the same thing like when I'm working with a client. I don't go into a client and tell them I'm awesome at SEO, I'm awesome at YouTube marketing. I've used YouTube as a primary way to bring people into my programs, and I've been very good at that, even with a very niche, small following. I've been able to convert a lot of people into members of my... I'm not going to come in and talk about that because they don't care. They want to tell me what their problem is and know that I know how to fix it. That requires me shutting up. Not always easy for an ENTJ, by the way. And it requires you listening to the other person. Period. So if you're interested in this girl, do what Brother Roosevelt did. Get interested in her. Not just in what she can bring you. All right. Let's catch up. Anyone who can hold their own with an ESTP has my respect. My daughter is ESTP. and she is badass in relationships. You know what? I don't know if I know any ESTPs in my life. Most of the people in my life, and I think this is God's sense of humor, are feelers. Almost everybody in my life is a feeler. Like the people that I'm closest to are feelers. I don't know any ESTPs. I wonder how rare that personality type is. Or, no. Nope, she's a feeler too. She's an ESFJ. Yeah, I don't know if I know any ESTPs. And if I do know them, I'm not aware that they're ESTPs. Actually, that's not true. I think I do know one ESTP. I'm just not sure if that's what she is. I'd have to ask her. But there is one person I see with some regularity, not a ton, that I would be willing to bet she's an ESTP. That's it. I noticed that to do the change at work because, okay, he's talking to Keith. Saren Orbliss says they're leaving. I don't know how long ago that was, but see you later. Thank you so much for coming out. Definitely check out the marriage experience if you are interested in either preparing yourself for an amazing marriage, or if you're in a marriage, making it even that much more amazing. When I first discovered the Myers-Briggs type indicator, I didn't want too many people to know what I knew. Were you as territorial with your findings as I was? No, not at all. In fact, I wanted people to know what I knew because I wanted to understand them so that I could make necessary adjustments, but I also wanted them to understand me. And I wanted to know their personality types. Like, matter of fact, I tested my entire family multiple times over the years because we had never done it as a family, and not just my family. I mean, my whole family. Like, it was one Christmas, I got everybody in the house on their phones to take the test. So, and it became this family discussion. It was awesome. But it helped me. Like, I already had assumptions about some of my family members because I lived around them forever. But it helped us understand, like, why me and my mother would have so much friction all the time growing up because of our personality conflicts and not knowing that personality difference and how to adjust to one another. You know what I mean? So, yeah, no, I didn't hide it at all. I was happy to share it. I couldn't wait. Keith says ESTPs are about 3%. That makes sense because it's not a group that I run into very often. By the way, I read that book when I was younger. How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a good book. So Undeservingly Blessed says, where can I find the test? You can either go to 16, the number 16, personalities.com, or what's the other one? That's a good one. I like their write-ups better than the other one. The other one is, I'm drawing a blank. So just go to 16personalities.com. It's a good one. Let's see. Is there a correlation between astrology and Myers-Briggs? I am not versed in astrology at all. So I am not qualified to answer that question whatsoever. Unfortunately. Can't help you there. Let's see. Jazz, Coast to Coast says, I think there is. Plus, she says she's a life path 7, but not really into numerology. Okay, so numerology and astrology are not things that I study personally. So I don't know that I could be of any assistance there. But you know what? What I'd encourage you to do is go out and find people that are and read about correlations, because one of the things I found interesting was it was another type of personality test that maps really well to Myers-Briggs, and I can't remember what it is now. Let's see. Keith says, or Sean, I'm sorry, Sean says, okay, cool. Keith says, I know some INFPs, but all are female. They are my favorite type. Probably the same for a lot of INTJs. Cool. Thanks, Jolly Mage. Jolly Mage has now posted the link to the humanmetrics.com. Thank you, dude. That was the other one. I tend to like the 16 personalities one better. It's a nicer website. The write-ups are a lot more detailed, and it takes you through career and relationships. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Some of it's somewhat stereotypical, but so is everything else. that you can read on Myers-Briggs because it's based on years of observation. And there's always exceptions to the rules. Cool. I am caught up on the questions for the first time in tonight's show. Please continue to keep them coming. I have, for the most part, covered anything in detail that I wanted to cover. What I'll throw at the group is, if I missed one of your questions, now would be a good time to copy and paste it so that, and I hear what I believe to be my wife walking around. Come on down, babe. You're not interrupting anything. You don't have to whisper either. They know I'm talking to you. The real question is, are the babies sleeping? I guess they are if you're walking around. Let's see. Maggie Mosby says, since we're talking about MBTI, post your type in the comments. I'm INFJ. Cool. INTJ says Keith. INTJs are so cool, man. Too cool. I know a couple in my life. Big fan. Also, if anyone needs social media links or anything about the programs, please let me know, says Jolly. Yeah, so anyway, a lot of good discussion tonight. I will leave the floor open for questions if you still have them. Here's the other thing. A couple of administrative notes for folks that are somewhat new to coming on my live calls. A lot of you have been around, like Jolly, you've been around me for years doing live calls and on the marketing side. But for folks that are new to what I do here, your questions don't have to be tied to what I discuss. They can be about anything. Also, if you have a highly personal question that you don't want everyone else to hear, but you want my wife and I to give you some feedback as it relates to relationships or career or anything else you hear me talk about. No, you're good. Just come. She doesn't want to be on camera because she's a woman. Right here, you won't be on the film. Like, just come right. The camera is here. You won't be on it. You're like a kid that's scared to get in the pool.
To be on camera in my pajamas.
You never want to be on camera because you're weird. And now I forgot what I was talking about because I started messing with you.
Social media.
No, that's what Jolly was talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was saying if you have a personal question you want me to answer, but you don't want the group to see it, you can send it to me. That's why you should be following me on Facebook if you're not already. All of those links are in the description to the left, except for the program that Jolly has the link to. In fact, what I should do while I'm sitting here running my mouth is just post the link to the program in the description, so Jolly doesn't have to keep copying it, but I'm happy that he does. And Pascal, I just saw your question. When things get tough in marriage, bear with me 1 second. And that's a great question. And I'm going to give you an amazing answer here in a second, so bear with me. Just need to put the URL on this. I can't speak English because I'm old. Copy. And then let's get to it. Where is it? Here we go. I'm going to edit the description. If you refresh the page, you'll now see the link to the marriage experience. And there it is. Booyaka. Now let's make sure the link actually works. And hopefully Google is smart enough. They are smart enough. Good job, Google. Make sure the link is right so that if you go to the marriage experience, you're only paying the 57% off price and not the full price. Yes, this is the page with the 50%. So reminder for those of you who are just tuning in, the marriage experience, part of the Good Life Playbook, as a thank you for being on tonight's live call, is 57% off. I've just posted the link under check out our programs in the description. Jolly will also post it as well in the comments. That 57% is for tonight only. As soon as I either before I go to bed or when I get up in the morning, we're going to switch it over to the full price, and then people are going to start paying full price. So as a thank you to everybody that's here, for folks that are interested in it, boom, 57% off. It's all yours. Now, back to Pascal's question. in which he asked, scroll back up so I can read it. He says, okay, be real, Brian. When things get ugly in a marriage, is it just up to communication to fix it? No. Communication is not going to fix years of neglect. Communication will not fix a lack of a foundation. Remember I talked about the foundation of friendship in a marriage? If you haven't spent time developing that foundation of friendship for when hard times come, then no amount of communication is going to fix years of neglecting. Like if you built a house without laying a foundation, like you just started building a house on top of grass, you didn't level things out, you didn't build a foundation, you just started building that house. Over the years, that house would slowly start to lean and would eventually collapse. No amount of paint, no amount of refinishing and sanding the wood or changing out the drywall and the insulation is going to keep that house from eventually collapsing. So you really have to build a foundation of friendship and intimacy, empathy and values, where you're both in it to win it no matter what, so that when hard times come, you're working together to overcome them, not pointing the fingers at each other and blaming one another for the hard times. Okay? And so you have to work very hard and very smart to develop. Like, think about how you've developed your best friendships over the course of your life. When you look at who your best friends are, these are people that you spend a lot of time with. These are people that you share things that you like with. These are people that you share things with when you're hurting a little bit. Something that E and TJ suck at, by the way. So any of my friends who are watching, it's like, you never share anything. It's because I suck at it. It's not because I don't love you. But these are people who walk with you in the hardest times. That's why I said studies have shown that a lot of times soldiers who go through war together have closer bonds than that soldier has with his family, because literally you depended every day on this other person to stay alive. And there's a love that's born out of when you go through adversity with someone. Like the Bible says, brothers, they're like brothers born for adversity. And you really become brothers when you go through adversity with someone. And when you go through adversity with a wife or a husband, and you have that foundation of friendship actually gets stronger in the adversity. It doesn't get weaker. You know, we've been through a lot of stuff as a family this past 6 months, with my father having an almost fatal stroke, my youngest son needing surgery immediately almost after he was born, and then having issues with his skull. And we were worried that he was going to have his skull drilled into. Thank God that didn't happen. But he's still going to have surgery for his eye, and he's got some developmental. There's all kinds of things going on. And when you have the foundation of friendship, though, that pain draws the marriage closer together. And it's not communication that draws us together. It's the willingness to be there for one another and comfort one another and pray for one another and get each other through it. Sometimes with just laughing. Like my wife and I were laughing to the point of tears with some stuff I made on Snapchat today, making fun of her. Or not making fun of her, I was just doing something funny where she was the focal point of the story I was telling on Snapchat. Which, if you're not following me on Snapchat, you're missing a fun ride. Believe me. I had friends I haven't talked to in 2 years see me post that and came to tell me that it was awesome. And it's BryantChambers, BryantChambers on Snapchat if you're on there. If you're not on there, get on there. It's fun. But the point is, we laugh together. So for her birthday, we did this whole big surprise thing that started with me taking her to see the Fast and the Furious 8 movie. I had never seen the Fast and the Furious series. So when we got home, she's like, dude, let's binge watch the entire series. Like, yeah. So we got through like episodes 1, 2, and 4 because we skipped Tokyo Drift the first night. And the next night we watched 5 and 6. Or the next weekend we watched 5 and 6. And then the following day we watched 7. It was dope, man. Like, that's fun stuff that we do together that we'll always have memories about. And that's building on that foundation of friendship. Like, if you ever go out to dinner with your family or your friends and you're always on your phone, you're not building. You're putting up a wall. Put your phone away. Engage with the people who are with you. You know what I mean? And communication, don't get me wrong. And I'll actually use this analogy and I'll shut up. Because I've seen companies and the government struggle with this very hard, is people do try to use communications to solve more complex problems than communication is designed to solve. Remember, communication is a function of effective leadership. It is not a replacement for it. I've watched many organizations attempt to fix the fact that their organizations were broken with underdeveloped leaders by putting together communications teams. Your organization's problem is not communication, it's you have a lack of leadership. And there's no such thing as a bad team, only bad leaders. And the fact that your organization is struggling is you have bad leaders. It's as simple as that. And now you're trying to solve the problem. Instead of developing your leaders or finding better ones, you're adding communication. So it's basically, one of my buddies used this analogy. He's like, it's like having a Chinese person try to talk to a Japanese person, and the solution to the fact that they can't understand each other is handing each one of them megaphones. So communication is an integral part of building your foundation of friendship, but it's by no means a replacement for it. All right, here we go. Sean says my typing sucks tonight. Undeservingly Blessed says, this is the first time I've ever done this on YouTube. Didn't even know this was possible. Hey, first time for everything. Thanks for coming, man. Thank you much. Let's see. Pascal says, my friend is an ENJI. What is an ENJI? And NI is wicked, man. Almost in some ways, stubborn in others. Not sure I know what an ENJI is. It looks like he tried to correct himself. Hold on. ENFJ. Okay, got it. Yep, that's my wife. She is an ENFJ. Jolly says, well, I can say a lot of NF. We are deep thinkers, and we as thinkers and dreamers are attracted to the theory part. Let's see, Undeservingly Blessed says, this is great, Jolly. Really appreciate all your guys' input and concern. I've learned a lot already. Cool. I naturally bond with ENFJs. My mentor was an ENFJ, and every time I'm in the presence of one, it doesn't take too long to bond. Yep. NFs really make good teachers. In fact, in America, NFs make up the second majority of personalities for teachers. SJs are the primary teachers, but NFs are the secondary. Tell your wife that Sean said hi. Sean said hi, babe. She whispered hi, Sean, for some reason. Mm-hmm. I don't know why she whispered it. I have no idea.
You always put me on blast.
It would just make any sense. Like, I'm talking at full volume.
I'm used to whispering. I'm used to whispering when you're doing
like, hi, Sean, is what my wife said. The Friendship Foundation sounds awesome, but most times yes. So I talk about this a lot, where Hollywood and the media and TV have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to relationships. They show you people in a movie that have known each other for 15 minutes and they're all of a sudden in love, which is BS. But they've given, even when I was a kid, and I'm sure before that, people had this idea that, I can't date this person because they're a friend. That's awkward. Like, no, dummy. That's what you're supposed to do, is become friends with somebody. And then from the friendship can bud into more things. People do it backwards. They try to start with the physical and then build a friendship on top of sex. Good luck with that. Let me know how it turns out. And I'm not saying it can't be done. Like, people who started with physical, I'm not saying you're doomed. I'm just saying it's not the optimal way to do it. Am I holding you up from something? Or are you just listening? You need to get in there?
I'm just listening.
Okay.
For now. I do need to get in there, but that's okay. Hold it.
Let's see. Pascal says, that's awesome that y'all binge watched Fast and the Furious. Dude, it was dope. I'd seen parts of part 1. That's it. and then finally getting to see them all. Like, they're really good movies, man. I was, because I'm not an action movie guy. I'm usually a snob when it comes to watching that type of crap.
That's what I was gonna say.
I'm like, dog, my intelligence is too high to watch this stupid. But the reason why I like Fast, though, and I told my wife this, is because it reminds me of 80s movies. Like, action movies that try to be deep usually just insult my intelligence, and Fast doesn't do any of that. It's like, we're just going to jump cars onto boats because we remember movies from the 80s that were ridiculous and fun like this. Like, the movie's just fun to watch. Like, it's not trying to be intellectual like a lot of action movies will. So yeah, I dug it. It was a fun ride. Keith Hayes says, I like the soldiers in battle comparison. That's exactly what it's like when you've been married a while. You know they have your back no matter what. Yeah, man, without question. Well said. Pascal says, I think Parnell is hating on this stream. I told them about Parnell.
Oh my God.
Your secret lover.
He didn't.
That all of YouTube hate you because you have a secret lover named Parnell.
I have a secret lover named
And
Parnell.
they feel bad for me because I'm staying trying to keep the marriage together.
Really?
And you're going to hang out with Parnell. The funny thing is when someone named Parnell eventually becomes a part of this, they're going to be like, can we change this joke, yo? Because I really don't appreciate this.
Oh, gosh.
So Undeservingly Blessed says, I've been watching your videos. I've been blessed from those as well. Thanks for the warm welcome. Yeah. Sean says, that adversity thing is true. It really brings people together. Yes, it does. Undeservingly Blessed says, all the abbreviations are still a foreign language. Got a lot to learn. Don't we all? Jolly Mage says he hates Parnell. That's Terrence. I keep calling him Jolly Mage. I forgot because he hasn't switched to his other channel yet where he's using his real name. And for so long I call him Jolly because before I knew better, I wasn't sure if he wanted people to know his real name. But now he told us last night he's switching. So now I can call him by his name. But he hates Parnell.
Poor Parnell.
And he hates what you've done to this marriage because of Parnell. The funny thing is, if you guys saw me and then you saw a picture of Parnell, this would be, matter of fact, do you still have the picture of Parnell?
No, I'm not doing that.
Because it's funny.
Of that person's privacy.
But he was like 18 when that picture was taken. He doesn't look like that anymore. No one knows him. But if they saw him, it would be funny. They'd be like, yo,
They might know.
how does Parnell cause so much trouble? How does this dude cause?
He just like latched on to the name because he thought it was hilarious.
Well, Parnell's not even his real name. It's me messing with his real
He labeled
name.
the name into Parnell.
Yeah, because it was corny.
And used it for puppet shows for our kids.
That's true.
And now it's evolved into, if I spend too much time away from home, I'm with Parnell.
You hear that? Well, because Parnell is not his real name. And like it's the name I call him because I think it's hilarious. Is my wife into conspiracy theories as an ENFJ? I'll let you answer that. I don't want to speak for you.
At one time, I was totally into them. I would.
She says if you didn't hear that, she says at one time she was totally into them. And so what changed?
Read a lot of them. I felt like it was too dark and consuming, and I didn't want to continue to live my life with just worrying about all these conspiracies and things that were happening, and being fretful about those things for the sake of knowledge.
Yeah.
So in that particular instance, I chose the ignorance is bliss route. But sometimes if I do come across information about those types of things, I have a compulsion to still learn more. To dive into it more.
And then his second question was, or are you into The Matrix? And the answer is yes. We love The Matrix. Is my favorite movie, or at least one of them. I've gone back and watched it and been like, this could have been.
Is it The Matrix a conspiracy theory though?
Yeah.
I think it is.
Actually, Elon Musk thinks that The Matrix is legit. Like, he thinks it's possible that that's really what's going on. And I don't know if he's being tongue-in-cheek when he says that. He's a eccentric type dude, so I don't know if he's joking or being serious. Because when he talks, if you have ever seen him be interviewed, him telling a joke would look exactly like him talking. Like he doesn't really have ebbs and flows in his tone. Like he's just kind of a straight the way he talks. The funny thing is, I went back and watched The Matrix like a couple months ago, and that movie could have been 30 minutes shorter. Like the action scenes just don't hold up quite as well compared to a lot of stuff we have now, and they draw out a little bit. But the premise of the movie is still freaking gorgeous. Still love it. Still love it. Conspiracy theories. I've always thought humanity isn't smart enough to pull off. Like, I think there's some small conspiracies that probably happen, but like global conspiracies, humans are too self-interested and, in my opinion, not smart enough to. It's like people that say President Bush is responsible for the. It's like, come on, bro. The reason why that's not possible is because somebody somewhere would have leaked it. It's, you know, and so I forgot the old founder of Atari. He basically said people will always accept an easy wrong answer, and I'm paraphrasing. They'll always accept an easy wrong answer, even if it's totally unbelievable, over a complicated answer that's right. So it's easy just to say, oh, this is the Illuminati that's trying to hurt everybody, than to really dig deep into here's what's really happening on a global scale, and we live in a very complicated world, and stuff just happens, you know, and there's causations and correlations that are very hard to map and track. And so we just say that there's these magical people that live in a building, these 7 white guys that are controlling everything. And it's just easier to accept that than it is to accept the reality. And sometimes I think those stories are more palatable and pleasing than the reality, which is sometimes humans just suck in the way we do things. You know, and nobody wants to really accept that. Like, nobody wanted to accept that we were complicit in the housing market crash. That it was totally conspiracy, and it was, yeah, people took advantage of people, but you were also the silly person who accepted a loan for an $800,000 house when you drive a school bus. Like, that's not the Illuminati, that's you being a clown. You know, and yes, were you manipulated into being a clown? Kind of, but you were part of the problem, not just the Illuminati. All right. If you look at the plugs used to charge smart cars and Teslas, they look like the plugs from the Matrix. Ooh, there's some conspiracy.
That is interesting.
That is interesting. BC is the only ENTJ I know. Yeah, we're rare, man. We make up 2 to 5% of the American population. I don't know how we fare in the world. But yeah. ENTJs are relative. We're not the most rare, but we're pretty rare. And I think the world is better for not having a ton of us. Because you have a bunch of commanders trying to command stuff. And we're not commanded easily. Like, it's not easy for us to find people that we trust in their competence to let them lead and direct us. So if you had a bunch of commanders trying to command each other, it could get ugly. It would be interesting, though, because Darwinism would totally come into play. Like, so whoever's the best is going to win Earth. Whoever's the best ENTJ is going to be the king. Like, there wouldn't be any democracy. It'd just be like, he's the best ENTJ. Let's go. All right. Charlie says she admits it. She be with that part now. Oh, man. All right, friends. What other questions dost thou have? Pascal just wrote something, but it hasn't showed up on my screen here yet. Now it has. As an extroverted intuitor user talking to someone using introverted intuition, I think that's what he said. Yeah, introverted intuition is like you are talking to an insightful monk. Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I'm an insightful monk. Or are you the insight? Which one of us is the insightful monk? Is it
you're
me?
not introverted.
No, I have introverted intuition. When you look at the cognitive functions,
Oh, I see.
I am an extrovert on the MBTI, but I have facets of me that are introverted, and my intuition is very introverted. Yours is extroverted, by the way. So,
I think you told me that before.
yeah. Like, my feeling is introverted. That's why I don't, like, you went out of your way to do the stuff you did for Mother's Day. You're never going to get that out of me.
That's why you let me do it, because you're like, you got it.
I'm like, well, because we just, as an introverted feeler, we don't see the world, like, and because, first of all, introverted feeling is my weakest thing. Extroverted thinking is my strongest. So I am outcomes driven. And when I mathematically look at the outcome from all that work, a better example is when mom's like, oh, I want to do a garage sale. And I'm like rolling my eyes like, you're going to spend 14 effing hours putting together a garage sale to make $100. To an ENTJ that just screams, I want to jump off a cliff so that this doesn't happen while I'm still alive. Please stop her at once. And because we're outcomes driven, and the action has to be justified by the outcome. And the outcome is, that's ridiculous. You're working for 15 cents an hour. Like, what are we doing? So
you never would have stood in line for an hour waiting for something that you had already pre-ordered.
No.
Just to pick it up.
Not gonna happen. Like, that's why we don't do Black Friday. To save $3, I'll just pay, like, literally, I'll pay $100 extra if I want it bad enough, just so I don't have to stand in that stupid line. Because while I was standing in that line for 9 hours, I could have done 9 hours worth of work and made thousands of dollars. You know, at the rates I could charge for my work if I charged by the hour, 9 hours of work, that's a lot of thousands.
I'm derailing your show.
No, you're not. This is what the show's about. That's what his question was about. So, and I'm using this to answer his question, is you would do the yard sale because for you, it's about the experience as an extroverted feeler. And you would go the extra mile to create this Mother's Day thing that's happening tomorrow because as an extroverted feeler, you care about how other people, your decisions are based upon how it's going to affect the people around you and the way that they feel. I'm looking at outcomes like the difference between how they're going to feel tomorrow if you do this and how they're going to feel Monday, whether you do it or not, is so marginally small that I'm like, I'm just not doing it. Like, we're mathematically breaking down that's, she's good. I'll tell her I love her tomorrow and give her a hug and say Happy Mother's Day. And the happiness, the distance between the happiness of all these things you built and getting a hug is really not that big. So why? Because we're masters of efficiency. Why put so much effort into a thing that doesn't give you a huge payoff? But that's not right. I'm just saying that's the way our brain works. Because sometimes it's wrong. Like doing a big thing for someone could totally land you a deal that's worth $1 million in 10 years if you did something nice for someone. So that's why it's good that I'm married to you.
That's why the other day I drove around JCPenney parking lot for 15 minutes with an elderly man because I saw him walking around in the rain.
Right. No, I would do that. I would do that. We're not heartless.
No.
But it's the outcome has to justify the action. Otherwise, we're just like, why are we doing this? Like, word.
But see, to me, like standing in line for an hour to get the Mother's Day gift that I know that is going to be much appreciated and just.
So hopefully this is answering your question. Go ahead.
And remembered is worth it to me because I know that the person that I'm doing that for, that I'm making that effort for, appreciates that type of effort. It's not something in vain. For me, and I don't know if this is based on my personality type, if I make that kind of effort for a person and then I realize that they don't care, that it doesn't matter to them one way or the other, then I'm not going to continue to put forth that type of effort on their behalf.
Right.
I will do what I know that they will appreciate, but I'm not going to overextend myself unnecessarily if I know that it's going to be futile.
Yeah. And it's nuanced. Like, your example of the guy at JCPenney's, an ENTJ would totally do the same thing. It's not that we wouldn't go the extra mile on Mother's Day. It's just not our nature. Like, you are wired for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you were wired to get up, like, how am I going to make Mother's Day? Ooh, feeling time. Like, you've been planning this for 2 months. Like, making us go out on the grassy knoll to take the pictures. Like, the ENTJ, nope. not doing all that. But the ENTJ will also go out of their way to take care of people as well. And when, like we were talking earlier about being self-aware, knowing that I'm not that type of, that's why I do your birthday surprise every year. Because you know how much I hate cooking. I hate it. I'm not a process, follow directions guy. I hate it. But because I know you would appreciate, because I know you're an extroverted feeler, I know that you would appreciate that I made a decision to go against my nature for you. And you'll appreciate the level. And I don't do it for your appreciation. I do it so that you know you are appreciated. And I know that for you, especially when we talk about the love languages, which is what we talked about on the last call, your primary love language is acts of service. So when I do an act of service, especially one that I desperately hate, it communicates to you, wow, that really is an act of service because he did something he doesn't even like doing. Like if you asked me to sit here and do social media marketing calls for an hour, I'd do it for 7 hours. But that wouldn't be a sacrifice. It wouldn't have the same impact as it has on you when you wake up and I spend 11 hours making baklava. You see what I'm saying? So it's not that the NTJs don't have it in them. It's that it's not our default setting. So those are things that I was telling them earlier in the call, that I've learned to practice things that aren't my nature in order to create an environment with the people that I'm around. Because I also told them that most of the people in my life are feelers. Yeah. I'm not around a lot of other thinkers like me. So I have to adapt to my environment. Okay. I think that was a decent answer to the question.
Long one.
Undeservingly blessed is going to bed. Good night, my friend. Thank you for coming out. As an INFJ, whoa. This YouTube is weird. It jumps. Like I'm trying to read and it just jumps to the bottom of the screen. Okay. Maggie says, thanks. You guys are amazing. It's great to have a lot of other MBTI fans to talk to. Yeah. I don't think INTJs get into conspiracy theories. We are the ones conspiring. You dang right. The masterminds, dude. That's so right. Let's see. NK says, any ideas on how to help a jaded ENFJ? Uh-oh, she's in your camp. Or if that's a she, maybe a guy. Jaded ENFJ get back into being loving and a believer of idealistic love. So I want to address that I don't necessarily know what idealistic love is. I might need a definition of what he or she means by that to answer the question properly.
Do you mean, I guess, what I took her by meaning idealistic love was just the type of a romantic relationship that everybody pretty much wants. Something that is ideal in their mind, whereas it's not toxic. There's no like codependent.
So my wife is an ENFJ. That's why I went to her, because I thought maybe she would understand where you were coming from a little bit stronger than I might.
I think she's using that term to just identify what like a normal healthy relationship. Okay.
So when we think of a loving relationship, our ideals are a positive situation where it's possible to have. Okay.
Where so it's possible to have an actual good relationship with someone
that is possible,
without the bottom falling out.
Yeah. Without it eventually turning into crap. So.
Which was a fear I had when we first started together.
What was your fear when we first started married?
Just because of past experience, when we were first dating, wondering, when the bottom was gonna drop,
So what's the bottom dropping? Like I leave you for Parnell?
No, but
or Parnella.
You're not when you're really not the guy that you're presenting yourself to be.
Oh, like I lied to you and I turned out to be a serial killer or whatever. I'm using extreme examples to illustrate the point, but I'm not trying to be funny.
A cheater.
Yeah, if I was cheating
some kind of controlling person.
Or if I was abusive or something like that, and I pitched myself as this really sweet, loving guy, which most abusive guys do because they have problems with being psychopaths and Machiavellian tendencies.
Yeah. So with that in mind, repeat the question.
So, well, the question's gone now, but I think what he or she was talking about was, please restore my faith that it's possible to have an idealistic, loving relationship. Well, if our almost 15 years of marriage, that's one thing that you can bank on. One of the things to help you restore your faith is that despite what you hear on the news and despite, people talk about their divorce rate is 50%, it's actually not. It's actually quite a bit lower than that. There are people like Miko and I who are, at least moderately happy. And I'm probably more happy than she is, but that's because I'm married above my pay grade. Not silly. It's the truth.
I think for her though, the thing she needs to keep in mind is, if you're trying to help a person who's been jaded in the past, it's going to take time if you're the person that's trying to convince them to come out of their shell again.
Yeah.
It's going to take time, it's going to take consistency, and it's going to take patience on the part of the person who is reaching out to them and trying to help them to break down those walls that they built up because they've been jaded in the past. So, time, persistence, patience, and
patience is a good one.
And knowing that they may lash out sometime or start to build their wall back up again, and that's not your fault.
It's part of the experience.
It's their fight or flight. It's their protective mechanism. So, if you really care about that person and you want to bring them back out after they've been through something like that, then I would say patience is going to be your...
And this person friend. May be the jaded person. I don't know that they're asking for a friend.
Then, the thing that you would... If you're the person that's jaded, the thing that you would ask the person who's pursuing a relationship with you for would also be patience, for them to be patient with you. If they don't feel like they have the time, or if they're not willing to do that, then let them move on.
Yeah, I think I think that's great. One, the only thing I would add is not knowing the context of this person's story, he or she's story.
Yep.
And we're talking to NK's question about helping a jaded person restore their faith that an idealistic, loving relationship is possible. We also have to be careful how we define, and that's why I said defining idealistic, because what idealistic may mean to NK is unrealistic in the real world.
That's true.
So if your idea, and I always use the term tongue-in-cheek, if you think it's all unicorns and rainbows, it ain't. So if you're looking for a relationship where there's no pain, there's no trauma that happens, your mate is going to disappoint you at some point, they're going to piss you off, they're going to hurt you, they're going to do things, usually, hopefully, unintentionally, but they're going to do things that either get on your nerves or hurt you very deeply, or at the very least, disappoint you and let you down. That's humanity. So if you're jaded against things like that, I think it's more along the lines, there's a certain level of reality that you need to buy into, that what you may be defining as idealistic just does not exist. If you're looking to marry Jesus Christ, then you might want to start looking at people like Billy Graham, who's already married, so sorry. And what I mean by that joke is people who are so well developed that they're at a level where they can give you this ideal thing, but when you're building something with somebody, you go through pain. Just like when you build a business, one of the things I've had to learn is that my business can't be great at everything as soon as it starts. And what I have to do is focus on the thing that I'm actually really, really good at, and then let the other pieces that make the business a more well-rounded business be added to it as I grow. Because remember, your business is just like a baby. When you first have a baby, the baby can do nothing on its own. It has to be fed by you. You have to wake up 4 times a night, or in my case, Miko has to wake up 4 times a night to feed the baby, to take care of the baby, to change the baby. It doesn't behave well. It doesn't behave like a well-oiled machine for many, many years. So the same thing goes with a relationship. When you're building something new, when you're inexperienced, it's going to take time for your ideals to be realized. So Miko said, I think said it best, there's a level of patience that you have to have. Wow. And that's why this program that we keep talking about is so important, because the first part of it is focused on getting you and getting all your crap to the degree that you can out of you, becoming self-aware of your character defects and the things that make you great, so you can double down on your great things and try to cut your defects, so that when you do enter into the relationship, you're not still trying to fix you. You're trying to work together with someone else. And that was something Miko and I didn't get exactly right. You know, we both came into the relationship with some issues from our past, some of which we didn't even know was there. And then on top of that, I had to go through a war. She had to go through me being at war. Two very difficult things for two very different reasons. And then for me, coming home was harder than being in war and having to deal with baby-fied Americans that whine about everything after I watched friends of mine get shot in the face and blown up. You know, and I had to come home to a world that didn't make any sense, and the things that made people angry weren't things that I thought should make people angry, and trying to adapt and live in a world where half the stuff that comes out of people's mouth just gets on my nerves. I mean, we literally, when I left video gaming, just to give you an example, I left a place that was literally trying to create riots and threatening people's lives over video game reviews. You know, these are people that, good God, you talk about me wasting emotional energy and me having to struggle in that world and having to deal with the depression that came along with it. Miko had to put up with that and had to put up with the anxiety that she had with me being gone and the anxiety of me coming home and not being able to connect to anybody. She can't escape that. There's no level of idealism that's going to cause that to just go away. That's something that you have to accept and then continue. And we're still working on that. You know what I mean? So again, it really comes down to what you're defining as ideal. If what you're looking for is just someone that will have your back, be in your corner, and work to build themselves and to build you while you work to build yourself and build them, that is absolutely possible. That I can help you restore faith in. But looking for a relationship that's without pain and it's all happiness, it's not reality. All right, and that's one of the things we wanted to make. Miko, when we first started talking about the marriage experience, she wanted to be very clear that needs to be part of our story. She's like, because I don't want to sell people that it's just all happiness and rainbows, because it ain't. It's hard sometimes. And I will say that our marriage is way easier than a lot of my peers and what I've watched them go through, some of them in divorce and in bad relationships. But at the same time, there's still struggle, man. Especially when you start bringing kids into the equation. So anyway, they responded. NK says, yes, ENFJs are originally very loving and giving until they have been taken advantage of. And he's become almost the opposite now. Probably. Okay, so he or she was asking for a friend, not for themselves. Mm-hmm. And he's become almost the opposite now, probably out of self-protection. Thank you both for the advice. Okay, yeah. So this person's been hurt and their defenses are up, and their defenses should be up, by the way. But if they have to know if they want to get into a relationship, there's going to have to be a certain level of trust. What I would encourage an ENFJ not to do is give all of their trust away immediately. Trust little by little. That way, as the person becomes more and more themselves, you're prepared for it and you haven't given all of yourself to them to feel like you've been betrayed. Yeah. Also make them take, when we're going through the marriage experience, the program, we're doing personality tests. One of the personality tests that we're going to have everybody take is called the Dark Triad. I would have him take that, and anybody that he's interested in take it, because he'll get a lot of good feedback. And then you can totally picture this. I found this really cool test that tells you whether or not you're evil. Ha ha ha. And I did that, and everyone I sent the test to took it because they were like, oh, this is cool. And you can, if someone's evil, because I think I had somebody respond to me privately, like, yeah, dude, I scored 100 on being a psychopath. I'm like, you realize a higher score is bad, right? Like, it's not okay. You shouldn't be excited that you got 100 on the test. This is the test where you want to score low. So anyway, those are some of the things you could do. Great question. Now then, Keith Hayes. Oh, no, they're talking about Keith. Keith says, I've spent hours talking to INFPs, and when I'm done, have no idea what we talked about, but it was awesome. So Keith he's been married 26 years. So he comes around the channel because he enjoys it. I said, we're going to get him to help us teach, man.
Seriously, 26 years. We want to be like you when we grow up.
Seriously, man. He's living the dream. All right, looks like all these other comments are people talking to each other, which is great. The one thing I hate about YouTube is that it's going to take all of these comments, man, and it's going to delete them. But you know what your boy Chambers is about to do?
Screenshots.
I'm just about to copy and paste them into a notepad document so I can have them. And actually, if Harvey's on the show, Harvey's been doing that for me lately. He's been emailing me a lot of the comments because YouTube just deletes them when the show is over, which is YouTube and its
so
live.
It's not like a regular thing.
No, YouTube runs live on a whole separate system, and it's just I don't want to call it dumb because I get the mechanics and the money behind why YouTube's doing it that way, but it's like, guys, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, nobody else would have a live streaming service if YouTube did this properly. They wouldn't be able to stay in business. So Keith says, later, folks. Have a good evening. Later, Keith. So, yeah, I think it's probably time for all of us to start getting ready for bed. If anybody has any burning desire questions, get them in now. And if we don't get to the question tonight, if you post something here at the end, we can answer it on the Facebook page, or sometimes if it's a really, really good question, I'll turn it into a video and answer it that way. Any burning desire questions, get them in the comment section tonight. I'm going to start to land the plane so we can get out of here and go to bed. That said, I hope everybody got something great out of tonight's discussion. I know I did. Thank you so much for all your questions, all your comments, all of it. This has been one of the best live streams I've done, and Terrence, aka the Jolly Mage, will tell you he and I have done hundreds of these things just on YouTube. So thank you so much for making this great. The plan is to do one of these every week, not necessarily sitting at my dining room table every week. I hope to get out and about if I can keep my phone charged to do that and not use up all of my I gotta turn the camera so the missus isn't on it because she's sensitive. So okay, did you make? You're in a shirt and yoga pants. Give me a break. She's like a nun. Now the camera's back, so if you walk out here, it's gonna see you. How long do you?
I'm fine. Just do what you need to do.
Okay. See, rainbows and unicorns, y'all. Anyway, thank you so much for a great live presentation night. Again, I hope you got something great out of it. A few things I want to make sure you do, and Jolly's going to back me up here, or you can just look at the comment section, or look at the description of the video. I want to make sure all of you are following me on Facebook. That's where a lot of the discussion offline happens. That's also where I get questions that turn into videos, because leaving comments on YouTube sometimes is a pain in the butt. So you go to Facebook, you can either message it to me or leave it right on my page. You're able to comment on my page and I can see them. I leave that open. I don't close that to the public. Make sure that you're following me on. So Facebook is BryantChambers page is the name of it, but the link is in the description. Instagram is very important. There I do inspirational messages, usually centering around a book that I've read or scripture from the Bible, with an encouraging message once every day, and then I do book reviews at least once a week. This week's book review was How to Win Friends and Influence People, which will also be on my website, BryantChambers.com, with a link to where you can go and get it on Amazon, which actually contributes to our mission. We are affiliates with Amazon, so people who make those purchases, it actually supports what we're doing here. So if you see any books on our mailing list that you like, buy it from our mailing list, because it goes into our pot of trying to change the world for the better. And the truth of the matter is, are we trying to change the world? Not on the grand scheme, but we are certainly trying to change our circle of influence, which as that branches out can certainly have a really positive impact on the world if we just focus on even influencing our small circles here. So get at me on all the social media. Also, if you are interested in the marriage experience, part of the Good Life Playbook, that link is also in the description, and Terrence will post a link to that. And if it looks like he may have already done it, but go ahead and post the link again, Brother Terrence, to the marriage experience. Again, tonight and tonight only is your opportunity to imagine you being single and learning all the things you need to know that's going to develop the gravitas you're going to need to attract the man or the woman that you want to bring to you. And then you're going to be able to become very self-aware with your personality type, your values, your character defects, all things that you can be working on to make yourself that much more attractive. Imagine that for a second. Then imagine help finding a mate and understanding, like we talked about here, whether or not the mate that you have found is a potentially good mate for you to move forward. Then imagine, once you've decided to make this a reality, the courtship process, and having somebody walk with you through the courtship process, and having a community of people who can advise you and talk you through it as you're going through each phase. And then eventually, when you do tie the knot, having a community that you're still a part of, that you can continue to come back to, reach out to for help when you're struggling. Because remember, people like Keith is 26 years ahead of you. People like Miko and I are 15 years ahead of you. We've already gone through some of the pain that you are sure to experience, and you'll have us there to support you. So I want you to imagine all of these great things, whether you're single and you're looking to make the move towards marriage, or if you're married and you're looking to make your marriage that much more awesome, or heaven forbid you're in a marriage that's struggling and you need to get around people who have been through the struggle and overcame it and are still working to make their marriage amazing, can help you to get out of that rut. I would argue in some cases even better than some of the pop science folks that you can go to out there and get a little bit of advice. It's not counseling. This is a community of people sharing the roadmap of success that we've been able to build. If that's cool with you, I want to make sure that you get the 57% discount tonight only by using the link that Terrence has put here in the comments. It's also in the description, the video description, called the Marriage Experience, part of the Good Life Playbook. So definitely do not drag your feet. I would like for everyone on the call tonight who's interested, actually I'd like for everyone to get involved because I know it's valuable. I've been running programs on the internet and helping companies on the internet for a very long time. We do not make crap, okay? We make, because we're a part of other programs, I get to see what other people sell, and I always come back when I'm in someone else's program and I see what they do. If they do anything that adds more value than what I do, I immediately come back and make sure I up my game. Because the one thing I want everybody to say in our program is if you're in other programs, you can say, yeah, but this dude, the amount that he gives, it crushes all these other programs. Not to say the other programs are bad, but I want the legacy of everything we launch. I want the message that people spread to be, they give way more value than anybody else in the game. And I have a coach that's very much like that. And I told him that to his face when he asked me, why are you a part of my program? I said, because you gave me more for free than I've paid people to tell me in business. You spent 10 hours with me, 10 hours of your life as an almost billionaire, telling me all of the things you knew about being successful. You even shared your notes with me about how you put your sales presentations together. Ain't nobody else out here doing that for free. I said, that's why I'm with you. And so I want to be like him. That's who I learned it from. I want to make sure that you're getting the most value, the most bang for your buck, because I take every dollar that comes into our organization very seriously and not for granted. All right, and if that makes sense to you, if that's something that you find value in, and that's the type of people you want to be aligned with, get on board. And I promise you, one of two things: you will not be disappointed, and if you are disappointed, you will get your money back for whatever month you're in. For whatever reason it doesn't work for you, it's not the way you want it, there is a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you get in there and you realize on day 30, this isn't my thing, you send an email, there's no questions asked, no explanation. That's how much I believe in it. I'm willing to just let you do it, see everything for whatever month you're in, and if you don't dig it, you get that month's payment back. And a thank you from me, and we invite you to come out. Usually what I do is I don't shut accounts down right away. I make sure that people can still access it. So if they want to go in and take notes from the stuff they did find value with, they can go and do that. Anyway, that's what the program is all about. Don't drag your feet. Ninjas, take action. Okay? So get that done. Lastly, oh, look here. We got Quack Pew Duck showed up. What's up? Good to see you, my brother. Long time. Lastly, I just want to thank everybody for coming around. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, I don't want you to subscribe for my sake. I want you to subscribe so that you can keep up with what we do on a daily basis. Daily content, whether it's our daily life strategy vlog, the Daily Bravo, or it's our personality type videos, or it's the ad hoc videos like these that we create live. I want you to make sure you're keeping up with that. More importantly, I want you to be empathetic tonight, and I want you to think of 3 people in your life that could benefit from everything we shared tonight, And I want you to share this video and any other videos on our channel that you've watched that you got something out of. Don't hoard it. Remember, you sow what you reap. When you give something away, something good comes back. If you've consumed something on this channel that blessed your life, be sure to share it with at least 3 other people that you know, but only if you know they would benefit from it. I don't want you spamming people just to send it out, because that's not what we're about. I don't want people getting an email about my video if it's not going to help them. But if you've got 3 people in your life that you know would benefit from hearing this, I want you to share this with them, however you want to share, whether it's through social media, you want to shoot them an email. I get a lot of ladies actually on Facebook, and I really appreciate it. I'll post something, and then they'll tag their friends. You could totally do that as well. However you want to do it, make sure you get it done. Remember, Miko and I love you greatly. We are stronger than I, and we'll see you tomorrow. God bless.
God bless.